Okay, it is 5 o'clock and we are live.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Middleton Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. And this is our overview for the 2026 budget. And Bill, would you please call us to order?
For the roll call, Heniro,
Here.
Lorman,
Here?
Crow,
Here.
all present.
Okay. And starting off this evening, we'll start off with our overview of the 2026 budget request and proposed budget. Take it away, Bill.
Okay, and actually, Mayor or Brian, did either of you have anything to begin with, or should I get started? Okay. I will share my screen. I do have a brief presentation to go over the overview of the requested and proposed budgets. Did send a copy of the slides out earlier today to the members of the committee. And just for the schedule tonight, we have a very full schedule. The goal is to get through the introduction and then have some time with each of the departments scheduled for 10 to 15 minutes each. Departments have been asked to not give a formal presentation, but to focus on a couple of major highlights within their budget, some limited time for questions, and we can certainly follow up with questions if there are additional questions beyond what we have time for this evening. Looking at an overview, and most of the focus here is going to be on the general fund and the general fund supported funds like the library and the youth center. And I should note as we get into the proposed budget that the proposal includes those general fund and general fund supported budgets. We have not proposed or included proposals for some of the utilities and the other funds. Starting at looking at the city's general fund, total budget requests came in at about $1.8 million more than requested revenues. So we were looking at revenues for the general fund of $26.2 million. Total expenditures, including all the department requests, came in at just under $28 million. So included in the information in the operating budget book are proposed adjustments for the general fund and general fund supported funds, including additional revenues of $524,000 and reductions from the requested expenditures of about $1.2 million to present a balanced budget for the general fund for 2026. As proposed, that results in about a 4.1% increase in both revenues and expenditures over the original 2025 approved budget. And just a couple things I wanted to call out here. First, of course, is looking at property taxes, which is the largest source of revenue within the city's operating budget. That, as you know, is limited by state-imposed levy limits. Historically, we've averaged around 2% net new construction growth and growth in our operating levy. This year, that net new construction percentage is 1.45%. That generates about $224,000 of additional tax revenue included for the budget for 2026. And that is a very low amount, especially considering where inflation is. That inflation as of August was running at about 2.9%. We are certainly seeing wage increases, benefit increases, and even increases in operating line items for inflation at significantly higher than the growth in property tax revenue. That creates a lot of the challenges that we're facing this budget, and a lot of the decisions that are included in the proposed budget are trying to look at how we can maximize our current revenues and focusing primarily on cost to continue to keep operations going, not much for new positions or new items funded in the budget. The next thing I wanted to highlight is state aids. We have most of our state aid numbers including the shared revenue estimate. One of the positives is that shared revenue is increasing due to some changes at the legislature that now is increasing based on increases in state sales tax revenue. And so our total shared revenue is increasing by 3.5%, just under $31,000. While that's a positive, it is a relatively small dollar amount out of a $26 to $27 million operating budget. And one of the challenges that we continue to face is that another state aid program, the expenditure restraint program, has been decreasing each year over time based on our tax rate. Once you qualify for that program, how much aid you get is a function of how your tax rate compares to a flat floor of $5 per thousand. And if you drop below that $5 per thousand, you are actually no longer eligible. And that is the situation that we are in, that over time, due to levy limits, our local tax rate has gone down and the city no longer qualifies for the expenditure restraint aid. And that's a $35,000 item coming out of our budget. A couple other local revenues I wanted to note. One that is increasing is the payment made from the Pleasant View Golf Course to the general fund. In the proposed budget, there was increase in the calculation for that. That payment is based on a percentage of their operating revenue. The proposal is to increase that percentage calculation from 3.19% to 5%. That's estimated to generate about $100,000 of additional revenue. And as the golf course continues to grow, their revenues would grow over time. So certainly a very positive and a significant amount of contribution from the golf course to our general fund with that increase. On the flip side, one area that's going down is this budget represents the final phase out of the cost recovery from TIF District number 3 to the general fund. That had reached a peak of about 1.8 million several years ago. And the city over the past 10 to 12 years has been phasing that out each year. With the closure of TID 3, that will finally be removed from our budget in 2026. And that's about a $100,000 reduction from that final phase out. So looking at a couple of the major assumptions included for the general fund, we started by looking at what is the cost to continue for all currently authorized positions. One caveat that's included in the proposed budget is delaying the filling of the HR generalist position to mid-year in 2026. That position was included in the 2025 budget. We actually had started recruiting, but then put a hold on the recruitment for that position with the retirement of Brian Wolhopter as our HR manager. We wanted to fill the HR manager position first, and the recommendation here is to continue to delay that hiring of that position to mid-year, allow us some additional time to sort out exactly how we want to recruit for that position, and also as a way to try to balance the budget in 2026. There is one new position included in the general fund, and that is an EMS deputy chief position. That is also recommended to be funded July 1 of 2026. First, to allow time for us to hopefully hire an EMS chief and have them involved in the recruitment process. And again, as a cost-saving alternative for the 2026 budget. One of the other major items included in the proposed budget is a general fund contingency of $430,000. We have several items that are not finalized yet. The first of which is the implementation of the compensation and classification study for non-union employees. There was the presentation of the report at a previous meeting. And so there is a pool of funds included in that personnel contingency for beginning implementation of that study. We also have contracts under negotiation this year for 2026 for both the police and the EMS unions. There are placeholders in that contingency for those contract settlements. Next couple items for the benefits. At this point, we do know that we have a health insurance increase of 7.9% with the recently approved renewal for group health cooperative. Dental insurance is not finalized yet, but what we're hearing is that we're probably looking at about a 6% increase based on our history with Delta Dental. There are some adjustments to the WRS rates, a little higher in the general, a little lower in the protective. That is built into the base budget and the proposed budget. And for operating line items, it generally follows the 2025 base approved budget with some limited inflationary increases. And certainly the proposed budget was not able to fund all of the requested increases or inflationary adjustments, but trying to target some that were the most critical or unavoidable due to existing agreements and contracts. The next slide goes through some of the major general fund revenues. Just for sake of time, I'm not going to touch on each line on here, but there are a couple that I wanted to highlight, particularly building inspection revenue. That one is one that can vary significantly from year to year based on activity. We are seeing a stronger year this year based on current permit activity this year. We don't know for sure what that's going to look like going into next year. The budget as requested was, I would say, somewhat conservative in looking at where that's been budgeted previously. The proposed budget does bump that up based on what we're projecting for 2025, with the hope that with some of the subdivisions that are underway that we'd be able to continue that activity at least through 2026. The next to highlight is ambulance billing revenue. This one, we have seen increases this year. We are anticipating some additional funding coming from the cost reimbursement changes with the Medicaid program. The question mark going forward is future federal cuts potentially from Medicaid and tightening of Medicaid eligibility and what that impact that may have. So we have put together a good faith best estimate based on that ambulance billing revenue, but there are things that are outside of our control that could affect that number in the future. And the final that I'd like to highlight is investment income. We have been above budget for the last couple of years. We're anticipating that we'll be above budget in 2025. This is a difficult one because we want to be careful about how much we are projecting in interest income, knowing that interest rates will vary over time. And we've already seen some reductions in rates. We're anticipating that will continue. We did include in the proposed budget an increase of $300,000. That's based on a average yield of around 3.5%. That's about 0.5% lower than where we are currently at around 4%. It's something that if we do build in that additional revenue estimate in 2026, we need to be prepared that in future years, if interest rates continue to fall, we may need to scale back that projection. Looking over at the expenditure side, our biggest cost is the staff that work for the city, wages and benefits. We had just under 9 full-time equivalent positions requested in the general fund, or at least partially funded by the general fund. Of those, only 1 is included in the proposed budget, and that is not due to lack of need. Their departments have made good cases for several of these positions, but just with the very limited revenue growth, the 1 position that was included was the EMS deputy chief and proposed to be funded with a mid-year start. Looking over at the capital budget side, this slide shows the history of where we've been for the city's annual general capital borrowing. Our 6-year average is about $4.1 million. The city had some discussions over the last couple budgets of setting a target of where we had been at $4 million, increasing that by about $200,000 each year. For 2025, we were able to apply $200,000 of surplus or unused capital funds. So where our target was $4.2 million in projects, we actually ended up borrowing $4 million. The target we've used for the proposed budget is approximately $4.4 million. And as the graph on the right shows, we are anticipating that over the next couple of budgets, we would continue to see both our tax levy and the tax rate for debt service continuing to increase modestly, reaching a peak in 2027, and then starting to see that reduce as some of our larger facility debt is being paid off for other facilities, creating capacity in the future for future capital projects. Looking at the requested budgets for the capital budget, there's a total of $7.5 million in general capital borrowing projects requested. Looking at that target of approximately $4.4 million, we had to make reductions of about $3 million. This shows by area where those reductions have taken place. I would say that we primarily have been working off the 5-year capital improvement plan. So looking at what has been identified, at least on a tentative basis for targets for those going forward, continuing to fund public works street budget at about $2 million. Vehicle replacement plan, stepping up from $650,000 to $700,000, and then allocating the remainder across departments. And we ended up with the proposed budget at $4.35 million, so providing about $50,000 under that target of $4.4 million. Certainly the city, through this committee and through the council, have the ability to set that borrowing target at whatever level, but we wanted to at least follow and come in with something that was under that target that was identified last year through the process. One thing that we did want to note is there are a couple of decisions included in the proposed budget that will have full year impacts in 2027. And typically we would not propose funding a position mid-year because you build in half of the cost of that position and see that full impact the following year and potentially are starting that next year's budget in the hole, so to speak. However, we do know that there is a levy limit adjustment that will be coming following the closure of TIF District number 3. That will be calculated based on the final value of the TID compared to the city's total non-TID equalized value. And we're estimating that that levy limit adjustment will be in the neighborhood of $1 to $1.1 million. So some of the items that we've identified in putting this proposed budget together for consideration for that levy limit adjustment are either bringing in things that have been funded by the TIF or funding the full year impact for some of these mid-year changes. So the first item on here, CDA downtown maintenance and contribution to CDA. TIF 3 had been making an annual payment to the TIF district, primarily funding several things related to the downtown. This would be an opportunity to bring some of those into the levy and into the operating budget through the general fund. There's full year impact of implementation of compensation study option number 3. That's proposed to be funded with a 7-1 start. That would be the full year impact. Full year impact of filling the HR generalist as well as the deputy chief. There's also a couple items that we've included as placeholders. These may change, but we wanted to build in a potential placeholder for additional costs related to implementing the annual operating costs of the ERP software project. Hopefully this is a conservative number. We'll know more when we get the actual proposals in October, but we at least wanted to be putting a placeholder in for that. And the other is investment income, just if we need to plan on scaling that back based on where interest rates are in the future. That would leave about $400,000 unallocated out of that $1.1 million. With that, we would be going into the department budget presentations this evening. And then from here at the next 2 regular Finance and Personnel Committee meetings, conducting budget deliberations. On October 7th, we would need direction for publishing the budget public hearing notice. Based on our calendar, we'd be hoping to wrap up deliberations by the Finance and Personnel Committee on the 21st, and then moving into the budget public hearing and amendments on November 4th, and then targeting adoption of the budget and the tax levy potentially at that second meeting in November on November 18th. There was a final slide in the slides that were sent out today with some additional information on the compensation study. We're not planning to get into that in detail tonight to allow time for the department presentations, but we can certainly respond to any questions on that or have that as one of the topics for discussion on October 7th. So with that, unless there are any questions for me, we'll be ready to start on the schedule. If there are none, the first department we had was Senior Center. Tammy? And I believe Diego is going to be bringing up the pages, so we have those available as we go through this.
Okay. I'm going to quickly run down through our operational requests. As everybody probably already knows, Jim Solander does our capital budget. So he and I work together and have discussions every year on the items that he'll talk to you about a little bit later. We know that our senior center is growing, and so you can see that by my request for postage of all things. Our seniors still like to have the newsletter mailed out. We are working on ways to try to reduce this in 2026, but we're not quite there yet. We've still got to convince our seniors to go online and look at their newsletter. So you're seeing a request there from us. We also have some requests here for buildings and grounds maintenance. Equipment maintenance, we have more and more challenges, as you know, with the age of the building. You saw in my narrative of things equipment-wise that have gone wrong and continue to go wrong. Our dining center, we do still share the cost of the dining center with the county. So we do get parts of the budget for county, but supplies is not one of those items. So we have requested some additional funds for supplies in our dining center. We also have right now about 170 volunteers, and so we like to honor them. These are basically inflationary costs just to be able to do that and keep up with holding events that honor our volunteers, just like we had one this morning, actually. Um, Also for county aid, you heard me mention that a little bit earlier. We did see a reduction this year of 2,567 or $67 in county aid. However, that is still being debated behind the scenes between the senior center directors and the county. So we're hoping they're going to reinstate that. But we didn't fare as bad as some because predominantly our dining center numbers actually went up in 2025. So that helped us recoup some losses from the county. And so that would highlight our requests of $9,567. And does anyone have any questions about the budget narrative? I did at the end of that, just wanted to point out, put in just a small note about sustainability initiatives. While they're small, we're pretty proud of that and we continue to work towards that internally.
Sure, I noticed, under revenue, you don't get any donations.
We do, yes. We do get donations.
Okay.
Yes. People donate to us on a regular basis. We also have a special fund that we get donations for. That's called our Friendship Fund. But yes, we do receive donations.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add, I appreciate the sustainability initiatives. When I got to that page in the packet, it warms my heart to see all those things. And yes, you and the folks working on those have every reason to be proud. I had a question in the narrative. You mentioned the greater presence on city committees like housing.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit what that goal is?
Yes. The CD or the COA has talked about having a greater presence on a variety of different committees so that older adults are equally represented. In fact, the mayor and I recently talked about perhaps appointing someone to the housing commission. You know, rents are just certainly a concern for our seniors. And we would like to have a voice on there, and I'm told there are openings, so that's good.
So would that be a person from the Commission on Aging?
Yes.
Because my only concern, I totally agree, we need to have that population represented. But as you know, the more committee assignments someone gets, the harder it is for them to be able to make it to all the meetings. So
Yes.
I wonder, would it be acceptable to just specify in our ordinance that one of the representatives of the public should be, a senior?
A senior, yes. And it's coming up on the COA's next agenda to discuss. We do have somebody already on the pedestrian transit committee. So we'll see what their thoughts are coming up very shortly. But yes, I agree. They do serve quite a lot already.
Okay, thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next, we have the Pleasant View Golf Course.
Hello. So a lot of our, from an operational standpoint, a lot of our revenues are based on trends over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. And then a lot of the expenses are based on those revenue prices. I think the couple key items that I have in there from an operational standpoint is the hope to promote 2 LTE staff members to a 0.83, so 1728 hours to an FTE position. That would be my hope, to promote them, to keep them. They've been working with us for 5+ years, and they're at their point in their lives where they need some additional benefits, and so I'm trying to keep them. So that would be the biggest challenge that I have from an operational standpoint. As you can see, we're going to exceed our gross revenues will exceed our expenditures. We are preparing for I would argue, a big plan to move our cart fleet to a fully battery battery operated cart fleet, which you can see in the capital line items and starting in 2027, 28, 29. So that's ultimately my goal over the next 3 to 5 years is to move our gas powered fleet to a battery operated fleet. The challenge we have is we've got a lease that's ending next year, and we're not going to be able to move forward with a battery operated fleet by 2027. So we're projecting either 2030 to have this complete or 2032, depending on the lease agreement we decide to move forward with. From a next year's capital standpoint, I mean, pretty simple. Greens mowers, it's just we're aging out greens mowers, and we are very interested in 2 battery operated greens mowers to replace some hybrid diesel powered mowers. Golf shop storage, just a small closet that we're going to do internally. And then cart path, that's just improvement plans that we do on an annual basis that we do internally as much as we can. Same thing with the parking lot and driveway patchwork. Utility carts, those are 2 battery operated utility carts that we want to place aging carts with, gas powered carts that we want to replace. And then a top dresser, which is, think of it like throwing sand on your grass, where we need to replace our top dresser that we currently have. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do really appreciate the $98,000 increase in the golf course's contribution to the general fund. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a nice conversation we had a couple months ago, so I'm happy to do it. Not me personally, but I mean, yes, I am, but we are happy to do it.
Well, and I'll also thank you for your efforts on sustainability. They're much appreciated.
Yeah, you bet. And you'll be happy to know that those mowers that we purchased, those Fairy mowers, have been really well received. It's done a really good job. We're very happy with them, and we're entertaining a 4th one in the hopefully 3-ish years. So yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Bill, will you be showing the district budget? For those new to the Middleton Fire District budget, the way it is laid out is simply at the top are the line items. In the gray area, it breaks down the cost per municipality. So the city of Middleton, town of Middleton, town of Springfield, town of Westport compares the 2025 and 2026 budget items. As you work down the page, you can go to the next section, go down a little bit. It shows income, then the total operating minus income, and then it also gets into the capital budget. On page, I believe it is 5, we don't need to necessarily go there. We can stay at the top if you'd like. On page 5, it does do the breakdown. Because we are a fire district, you pay by equalized property value, which changes. We get those numbers from Department of Labor, get it from Bill annually. And this year, the city of Middleton decreases by 1.25%. So on the overall, there's a decrease by 1.25%. And if you look at income, there is a major increase from 2025 to 2026 in the state of Wisconsin 2% dues income. And that is a program there where if we perform all of the tasks laid out by law by the state of Wisconsin, we get audited, we receive those funds. In 2025, we received an additional $22,000 that goes into the city of Middleton's general fund or wherever that goes, but it is accounted for in 2026 with that increase. So in short, from the line items at the top, there's approximately a $53,000 increase. In income, there is an approximately $63,000 increase for a net decrease in 2026 of $10,490. So there's increase 53,000, decrease of 63,000, net decrease operating budget of 10,490. The increases are laid out in wages, part-time wages, monthly stipend, health insurance increase, life insurance, which we haven't really accounted for in years past, supplies and materials, just with expenses of nothing new, just overall expenses increasing, equipment and uniform and equipment, just some small items as we work down through. So holding steady from 2025 to 2026 in several items, small increases in others. This does, as far as of today, this shows a 10% increase in health insurance as a placeholder only. State of Wisconsin, as far as we've seen, have not released those rates for the program that the fire district is involved with. So there's a placeholder there, and we feel that that is a conservative amount, that this should be a worst case scenario. Also for wages, there's a 4% increase, again, not knowing where the city of Middleton will land with their study and otherwise. We generally follow that, but again, hopefully worst case scenario. The I think that's it for operating. So net negative $10,490. I'm going to go to capital. Capital, we are not asking for anything above and beyond our annual capital replacement plan. This year, we are targeting specifically items for facility maintenance. Some windows that need to be replaced, painting of some doors. I apologize. I'm going to list off specifically those items. The bifold doors painting, key scan door entry system, retention wall at Q&M, server parking lot seal, exterior weatherproofing, for a total of $119,485 for the city of Middleton portion of the budget. But again, that is not above and beyond the set amount that is placed into the capital replacement fund annually, which currently, I believe, has the city of Middleton's share has approximately 1.4 million in reserves. So we're sitting well there. One of the major projects that we are looking at in 2026 is looking at our replacement of our apparatus. As you look down the line on the capital replacement fund, we're looking at a deficit in 2032. As you may have seen in the media, there's lawsuits taking place with manufacturers of fire equipment. There is 5-year, on some of the apparatus, 5-year wait periods. You have to order, get in line, and then receive it 5 years later. So we are prolonging the use of our apparatus. But with that, we are looking at the potential of whether or not refurbishing the current fleet of vehicles, doing a frame-off restoration. There are companies that will do that. So utilizing the current apparatus, getting new warranties, new technology, new equipment at a fraction of the expense. As you can see in 2033, the aerial ladder, it's currently, if we were to purchase today, they're about $2.4 million. And the replacement in 2033, again, is 2.9, projected it to be 2.9. We are hoping to, right now, if we were to refurbish it and look at that plan, decreasing that by $1.9 million. So all the frontline major 4 pieces of apparatus we're looking at is refurbishing a viable option versus purchasing new. As you know, our strength is in our rapid response vehicles. We put out smaller vehicles to keep the larger apparatus off the road, have to have them for large-scale emergencies, for insurance purposes and so on. But 95% of all of our calls are managed by basically these smaller rapid response vehicles that are currently, our new fleet will be going online here shortly. They're equipped with solar panels. They can work off-grid. We don't need to have fire stations built to store these. They're taken home by our firefighters, our fire officers, taken to work by our volunteers, and have reduced our fleet so far by 4 vehicles. And so huge savings there. We would like to see if we can continue to, if you will, cash in on that value by utilizing apparatus that are well maintained, just up in the years. And instead of paying 2.9 million for a new one, maybe refurbishing it for less than 1 million. So those are major capital projects, things that we're looking forward to working on in 2026. So any questions?
Madam Mayor.
I just want to let you know that when I met with the mayors recently, my apologies. When I met with the mayors recently in the county, they did talk about that litigation, and that it is a very, that time, that lag to obtain the materials is real. It's something they're all talking about right now. So I like that you're thinking about how can we use what we have. But I will also tell you the chatter, even beyond our county, is how much people really like your rapid response trucks. And there is some envy. So thanks for being super cool and showing people another option.
Thank you.
Okay, Randall.
And I'll just say, I've been impressed over the years with how well you've maintained the fleet and looking at all the different options as to maintaining them, re-equipping them, kind of being, again, like with the rapid response vehicles, being in the forefront of using what's best for what you need to do. I appreciate that you're looking at other options for the future expenses. So.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Up on the schedule is.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time. First off, I want to say thank you for the out of cycle, part-time to full-time approval for my IT department, the staff. That was incredibly helpful for us, and hopefully moving forward, we can provide greater service to everybody. We did find a candidate. We're currently backgrounding that individual, so fingers crossed. So with that, I'd like to talk about the operating budget for IT for 2026. The majority of it are just vendor software increases and outside services increases. Prices go up. It reflects roughly around a 2.6% increase in our budget. Thankfully, some of it was offset by MPIS having increased membership and being able to decrease some costs associated with that. Bottom line is just the fact of personnel changes are the only significant real impact for our operating budget this year. And offset, like I said, by the MPIS reduction itself. So does anybody have any questions regarding the operating specifics? Yes.
I have a question about, in the narrative, you have under performance measures. Performance metrics, I'm looking at page 35 of the packet, phishing and account compromise, the click rate has gone up from 8.2 to 10.2%. Can you explain what that is?
Correct. So on a quarterly basis, we send out phishing campaigns to try to make sure that folks are, reviewing their training, complying with the training, and not getting caught. So I think of these more as teachable moments for staff. We intentionally try to trick them so that make sure we reinforce the training that they're receiving. We only get really concerned about that when we compare it to them not completing the training. So if they're not completing their training and they're failing the phishing campaigns, then we would be concerned about it. But again, think of it more of a teachable moment and everything. They immediately have identified the fact of why they failed, what they did. So again, reinforcing that, and just kind of building those layers for our security.
Okay, thanks.
Is any of that tied to HR and merit increase for pay? My employer does that. So if you don't do your annual cybersecurity training, clickbait training, so on and so forth, you don't qualify for pay increases.
I'm going to defer to our city administrator.
Not at present. No, it's not part of that process, but it's something we could take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I am. It's a matter of it's institutional policy, and I don't know if the state is enforcing that, but it's certainly is. It's very simple. You do your HIPAA training, you do your cybersecurity awareness training, and there are 3 modules. Talking, it takes an employee 20 minutes to do each one. If they don't do them, you don't get paid. Well, you don't get your merit increases.
Absolutely. And that's, I know other, organizations that enforce it that way. Ours has been more reaching out to supervisory staff to let them know that, they're not complying, they're not completing those actions and everything, and that it's obviously an important step in keeping cyber secure. So anything else with the operating? All right, I will switch over to our capital. We only have 2 items for 2026 projects. Our computer replacement plan is the same amount that we've asked for on an annual basis for replacing laptops, desktops, police tough box on a 4-year rotation. Then the big ticket item we have is the PD Isilon SAN, which is a large storage device that keeps all of their arbitrator camera videos, their body camera videos, and sensitive images and what have you secure. Does anybody have any questions along those lines?
Have you seen any trend in increasing the replacement plan? I've seen it where I am. We've said 4 years, and they're talking about 5 for laptops, desktops.
We have definitely been, we kind of on a year-to-year basis, we kind of evaluate that to see if we can extend the life out. What we typically do, especially with our tough books, because they're they're more big ticket items as far as the costs associated with them, we will bring them back, wipe them, and then we actually deploy them out to our municipal fleet. So that way we use them for additional 3 to 4 years, depending on how well they're performing. Then after that, we'll go back to, we have a vendor that we solicit to give us any value on the items that we collect back. If we can sell them back to get a profit back to the city, we'll do that. And if not, then we go ahead and we have a firm that we do recycling with to make sure the components all get recycled.
I frankly think 5 years is pushing it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a balancing act and everything. You want to be able to get the value out of it, but you also don't want your users sitting there banging their head in frustration. So, because it's too slow.
Thank you.
Would you mind touching on the arbitrator? We had that on there. If that it should still be on there for 2026.
Oh, I apologize. I skipped that one, non-intentional. The arbitrator system upgrade. We were informed that arbitrator needs to be upgraded because there is a patch that's being implemented. And if not, we will no longer be supported by the manufacturer of the system. So that was a last minute ticket item that we included in there to try to cover that expenses.
Drew, when are you retiring in 26?
We have yet to set an exact date. I am thinking the first quarter of the year. But right now, because of the fact we have the ERP process going and everything, I want to make myself available. And with a new employee coming on board, I also want to have some overlap with them to try to get them trained up and everything. So that way we don't, have a significant drop off and everything. So that's my vague way.
So this might not be the last time you're presenting a budget?
Oh, I can say that this will be the last time I'm
Okay.
presenting a budget.
Well,
IT
then,
nerds don't like sitting in public and it gets us nervous.
Great. Well, you've done a great job. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
congratulations on presenting your last budget.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Doing well on time. Next up is building inspection and facilities. Jim?
Operating budget first.
Yep.
Trying to remember what I had in there. We're going through a new code cycle, obviously. It's up in the air. Could be as soon as November 1. It could be in the very, very near future up to April 1st. But with that comes a whole slew of training and code books. It's approximately 10 books per person, and they're several $1,000s a piece per person. Luckily, I've been slowly accumulating these over the last few years. We still have a couple plan reviewers to get up to speed. So we asked for some additional funding for code books. With the help of the Sustainability Committee or the Sustainability Chair Kelly, we have had a few minor hiccups with our solar, but we don't have any maintenance funds set aside for any of our solar systems, our rooftop PV systems. We had a small hiccup with one earlier this year. Luckily, it did not require maintenance. We thought it would. Most of our systems, parts are covered under warranty yet, but labor is not. So Kelly worked with some neighboring communities to figure out how they budget for repairs, for labor. And we came up with, it was roughly, I want to say it was $1,500 per system per year for repairs, if it's so needed to be. So we are asking for $4,000 for future repairs on our systems. They are starting to get a little dated, and they do tend to have minor electrical issues occasionally. Parts are still covered. This would just be for warranty items or for labor items. The city building roof preventative maintenance contract. So we've had some roof issues ongoing for many years on a couple of the buildings, which we'll talk about on the capital side. But in troubleshooting them and trying to find the issues out, I had a company reach out to me and said, hey, Jim, instead of waiting till the last minute, we specialize in preventative maintenance. So I sat down and had a couple meetings with them. I said, put a package together. It's a pick and choose package. I picked a lower end of the spectrum. I think they're coming in twice a year instead of 4 to 5 times a year. They come in twice a year, do a full-blown PM on every one of our buildings. They do minor repairs, touch up caulk, patch leaks, clean gutters, clean roof drains, clean the roof itself to get all the mold and mildew off of it. They will do all of our roofs, every building. It's all 8 buildings that I have control over through facilities. And provide us an in-depth report on what we need to watch for in the near future. What needs to be replaced, how much life expectancy we have out of that roof. It is a heavy lift at 24,000 for that, but for what they're providing, myself and Jeff, our facilities guy, we sat down and listened to them, and we think it's well worth what they're gonna provide for us over our buildings if we're going to keep them. Sustainable materials for City Hall, that's just our standard routine materials we buy here, cleaning, janitorial, routine upgrade stuff. We're just asking for a little bit more on the sustainability side for those materials because they do cost a little bit more. Utility increase, I've been talking with MG&E as we do pretty much almost weekly on different things, and I've been talking to them about the increase that we're going to see across the board for gas and electric. So I think I calculated that at about a 3% increase or a 4% increase that we're going to see this year. So the utility bill is going to go up a little bit. And then communication, same thing with our cell phones and our tablets. The use fees go up every year for that. So we need a slight increase to keep our cell phones and our tablets going. Any questions on my operating side?
How much did you spend in the past on roof maintenance?
Honestly, it's as the fire arises. It's when there's a leak, when there's a problem, we bring somebody in to fix them, is how we've been handling it ever since I've been here, which has been 6 years.
And have you just kept record of it? So you said, well, last year you spent.
We have not had a way to keep those records until very, very recently. We did get that through the budget last year. We have implemented a tracking program that is in its very infantile stages of getting that organized and set up. I really have no way to track each building in the past. I know our 2 major buildings that we've had a lot of issues with, PD, Senior Center. We've been tracing leaks on them I've been here 6 years. We've been chasing them longer than 6 years on both buildings. Cannot find them.
Yeah, I understand you can't find the leaks, but I mean, just in terms of from an accounting standpoint, looking at a spreadsheet and saying, this is how much we've spent previously just fixing roofs versus this is, it's going to cost $24,000 for this PM contract.
That's why I have begged for a tracking maintenance program so we can track our funds, because there's really no good way. There was no way to track it in the past.
So
Some buildings took care of their own maintenance and we had absolutely nothing to do with it because we did not have a facilities program back then.
But they somehow.
It went into their repair budget.
Okay, and they should, in their repair budget, have a spreadsheet that says we contracted ABC roof and spent $500.
Depending on how it was reported, yes.
I mean, they should have record of it. We have to. There should be transparency on that.
I don't know how it was submitted because I did not have control over those repairs back then. I know PD, when I first started here, we flooded the roof at least twice. Both times was $4,000 or $5,000 worth of labor to flood the roof.
Sure. All I'm saying is I appreciate and understand a preventive maintenance contract for X amount of money, but if we just don't know how much we've spent in the past, I would expect to have some sense of that at bare
We did not track it. It's in each building's repair budgets over the years, and it was not funneled through a facilities program. So my department didn't have any way to track it.
And we can't go to those building people and say, how much did you spend on fixing your roof? Library?
I think as a follow-up item, we could contact the departments and ask what they have. I think what Jim is saying is that it would probably be a manual process for each department to go back and look at their invoices
Exactly.
paid.
I completely
But we can
understand that.
ask and see what they can provide.
I'm just raising the question.
Yep.
Just for transparency, we're asking for money, but we don't know why we're asking for that amount of money based on how much we spent in the past. That's all. I'm
Well-
not saying it's not worth it. I'm just saying,
We know why we're asking for that, $24,000, but we don't know how that compares to what we have spent in the past.
maybe we're
'Cause it's all-
spending
'cause it's all-
$50,000
'cause it's all
or
spread out,
maybe
right.
we're spending 10,000.
I have a question, Jim. So given the three building, I assume the library, senior center and city hall are part of the 8?
Yes.
If you took those out, how do you think the price for the contract would change?
I'd have to go back and look at those numbers. I got them several months ago. It would probably maybe a quarter less, rough guess.
Just something to think about since. these
With the
three-
campus, that was
yeah.
on my mind as well. We just went with the 8 that we had until we, knew something more firm that we could. And it is by building because each building has a different style of roof and a different size. So they did give me a price break per building. We just added it up as all 8 is the contract for the 24,000.
Madam Mayor?
For the follow-up purposes, when you reach out on what was spent in the past, likely they would give an accounting, so not for Jim, but for the budget folks. It should also include the calculation of the labor because if they're coming and they're actually doing the fixes, unless of course it was contracted out. But if our staff was on there, for 5 hours doing a fix or trying to find a fix, that becomes part of the calculation, which I think is what Alder Lorman was saying. The other piece is as we think about the community campus and try to figure out what that cost adjustment would be, we'd have to remember that we wouldn't start in 26 building out anything. We would need a 2 to 3 year run. So if the council decided, or the community decided to go forward with such a program, that would be the at cost for 26. Thank you.
Capital side, a lot of projects on there. We worked with all of the building managers, department heads to compile a list of capital projects. The senior center equipment updates it's a combination of things. The sinks, we have a lot of problems with all the sinks. They're very dated and aged. The handles keep breaking off, so we want to upgrade all of the fixtures, basically. Just not the sink itself, but the handles, the faucet, the drain. We honestly, we spend at least once a month over there replacing handles, if not twice a month. There's a door that is, the ADA assist door on the backside parking lot is not repairable. It will lock people in the building. It will lock people out of the building at random times. There's times we've had to come in at 9 o'clock at night because they can't lock the door to get it locked for them. That's the majority of that cost. It's a very expensive ADA powered lock assembly. There's some miscellaneous floor tiles that are cracked in there that's in that general equipment repair cost and some painting issues as well. We grouped it together as general maintenance to put it all under one instead of having 6 different smaller individual things. We have 2 more furnaces.
One
One
this
more.
year, one
One,
next
yeah.
year.
Yeah, we have 2 left after the 2 to do this year yet. We're looking for 1 next year and 1 the final year. Then that will be all of the furnaces since I've started in 6 years. We should have a couple year break, hopefully. The roof leak. I've had at least 3 companies come in the last year trying to find it. A couple of them did the work pro bono because no idea. They were trying to get our business. So that was really nice. One of the companies, very well-known company, they do a lot of work for us on the roof. They have brought in 2 of their leak specialists to find this leak. The one day they spent almost 6 hours up there. Their best guess is it's coming from the adjoining building, which we have no control over, and there's no maintenance agreement between us and them. I don't know. They're very old buildings. They think it's in the exterior brick facade of the adjoining building leaking down, then coming in our side down below in the roof area. We have no way to prove that. I have not reached out to that neighboring building owner. They are going through a remodel as we speak. They have yet to get me plans, but they started doing demo work. So I'm going to probably be talking with the architect and the contractor while we're over there, see how far they're going on this project and go, hey, let's look at some exterior wall facade upstairs, please, to see if we can find this leak. The money we're asking for on that is to do some more exploratory on it on our end of the building, fix some roof pitch pockets. I don't have an exact cost of what, nobody knows what it's gonna cost to fix. We're going with that number as a good faith estimate of researching it and repairing it, and hopefully that covers it. Hopefully it doesn't even cost that much, but we don't know. It could be a very minor thing. It could be something major. It has been getting progressively worse this year, which is the reason we want to go after it a little bit more aggressively if we can. It was one little area. Over the last late summer, it's turned into 2 areas. We don't know if it's running behind the brickwork or not. There's no way to tell. So that's where that 30,000 ask is coming from. Police department has some security issues with key cards. There's some doors that are not key carded, so they're constantly doing the keys, tracking, and there's no way to track who comes in and out of those rooms. So they have, I believe it's 4 doors, it's either 4 or 5 doors that they want to add key fobs to so they can track who's coming in and out. IT can turn them on and off as needed. Somebody loses a key, we don't have to rekey everything, they just turn that fob off. We're asking again for the locker room expansion, but we downsized it. We cut the lockers in half. The bulk of that cost last year was locker costs. They're very expensive lockers. They're conditioned to cool the body armor, dry it, so that when they come in after for their next shift, they're not wearing nasty, wet body armor. So they have power in there to charge their radios and their phones and all of that, and cameras, and then it has the HVAC system built into lockers. So they're expensive. We downsized the cost of the amount of the lockers to hopefully get down to a reasonable number to add on to that locker room. The rapid snow melt is the parking ramp in the back. It has been problematic since I've been with the city. It cuts off at odd times, especially when we need it in the wintertime and the ramp freezes up and they can't get in and out safely. We have to go down, manually reset it, shock the system. We've talked with our HVAC contractor. He has looked at it many, many times. We've replaced some controller parts on the boiler trying to fix it. What's happening is the loop is getting too cold and it's shocking the boiler and sending it into fault. So they want to create a false loop that tempers the heat so it doesn't shock the boiler with such cold water or cold glycol in the wintertime. PD roof leak, same thing. That roof leak has been going on long. I've been here almost 6 years. To my knowledge, that roof leak's been going on close to 9, 10 years. We spent a lot of time in the past talking to my predecessors, flooding that roof, trying to find the roof leak. Again, we don't think it's a roof leak. We think it's a duct leak. And actually, Jeff is going to school right now for a facilities program that we have him in for with Milwaukee Technical College. And they actually discussed roof leaks last week, and he's got an idea that he's going to try and see if it fixes it on the HVAC system. We think it could possibly be an access panel, so he's going to look at that. Basically, everybody that's looked at it has narrowed it down to it's not the roof leaking. It's probably the rooftop ductwork that building has. Couple ways to address it is we need to seal it and pressurize it and fill it full of smoke, see if we can find the leak. Part of that cost is covering that. The other part of it is to solve the leak or fix it down the road. Another option, they have this product called AeroSeal that you inject this compound into the duct under pressurization. It will seal it and close it up. It's not cheap. That's very expensive. I don't want to go that route unless I absolutely have to, but we've got to try to find the leak. It does leak down into the main corridor by the break room. We have a bucket every time it rains under there right now. It's very sporadic. Sometimes it fills, sometimes it's just a little bit. It just depends. The mock fans. We replaced a few fans out there. We have a few more up for replacement. They are very, very, very large fans. I want to say they have a 10-foot span. They're not cheap. They're high end. They circulate the air, they move the air, the CO2 out of the garage itself and keep the air moving so that, because the AC system, HVAC system cannot handle the volume of air, so we have to have the ceiling fans to keep it moving to get it to the system to exhaust it. Recycle center epoxy floor, the floor needs to be re-epoxied. It is wore out, it's starting to wear. It's routine maintenance to keep that floor epoxied and sealed. The concrete floor resealing is it's set up as a multi-year endeavor. Because it's a very large floor, we have to go in, clean all the cracks, and then grout seal it, and then seal the floor itself. So they want to try to break it up over a few years to spread out the cost. That 75,000, if I remember correctly, was just a portion of the floor, not the entire floor in the entire building. The two north doors replacement are two big overhead doors that, again, fault out and repair. They have the fast doors, which are we did a lot of research on them last year with the city of Madison has them on their facilities or on their operations building. We're able to repair them ourselves instead of having the overhead door company come in all the time. They're very resilient doors. They can actually take an impact from the dump trucks and it doesn't really hurt them. Where our metal doors now, when we hit them with a dump truck, we have to replace them because they get very damaged. Salt shed repairs. The salt shed is, best guess, 20 years old, I'm guessing, is what I was told. It was relocated out there when we built the mock years ago, long before I ever started here. It's creosote timber building. That salt eats creosote, it eats wood, it dry rots it. There are several holes that have happened over the years due to the age of the building. What happens is our salt, which we buy in March and store all year long, then falls out, disintegrates in the atmosphere, and we lose our salt, and it's not cheap salt. They have plywood patches over it as it happens. Again, that amount is a very hopefully close guess because the building is full of salt right now. I cannot see all of the damage because it's buried in salt. I spent probably 6 hours out there one day doing evaluation, taking pictures of the damage that is visible. The outside, I could see some more. We kind of rough guessed it and estimated what was buried under the salt that we cannot see and came up with that number to replace some of the timbers in the building. The main structure is fine. It's just timber siding that needs to be replaced. Any questions on my capital projects? I know there's quite a few there.
Yeah, the recycling center floor, I go out there quite a bit. I mean, cars are driving through it, so they're gonna destroy the epoxy. Does it have to be epoxied where the cars go through? What's the purpose of the epoxy other than making it look pretty?
I would have to talk to Brad and his staff out there. They came to me and said, Jim, we need to re-epoxy the floor.
Yeah, I mean,
There are vehicle epoxy coatings. I don't know what was put on there when it was done. I have no clue.
I can maybe understand the areas where the vehicles aren't driving, the staff has to work and walk and clean up, but cars are just driving through there, year round, pulling all the dirt, sand, salt, water, rain, muck, right into the building, grinding it into that epoxy. It'll never last. Oh, be curious to know. I mean, maybe we don't need to spend any money on that. We can live without epoxy. It's just cosmetic. I got no other questions.
I just some questions about, because none of these capital things involve the library, but I know that the library has needed some things and it often comes out of the library funds when they have to repair HVAC or whatever work that Jeff does over there, I know. Are there things that you see that the library needs in the coming years? Or?
I have, Jeff went over and talked with Jocelyn and the library staff, and he didn't bring any projects back from the library for facilities. I know they have some stuff they're doing on their own.
Right,
I'm not involved with that. I
Okay.
don't know what they are.
okay,
Matter of fact, when I was looking at it earlier, it was the first time I've seen some of the stuff that they had recommended.
okay, thanks.
I appreciate your attention to detail. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And next on the schedule is library.
All right, good evening. To give you a little bit of an overview of sort of the last 10 years worth of budgets from the library, I would encourage you to go to midlibrary.org/board and take a look at the July roadmap report. This gives you kind of an overview of how library funds have shifted and evolved over the last decade, and where we've moved and shifted things around to accommodate things like digital library resources and start new initiatives like the Bookmobile. It also kind of gives you an overview of how we've invested in staff and where our operations in terms of the building have really been invested over the last decade. So in terms of the 2026 request, these don't necessarily fit into a specific initiative as it relates to the strategic plan, but more as in just a cost to maintain. The costs of books and materials is going up from publishers. Tariffs are impacting the publishing industry quite a bit. So we are requesting a $20,000 increase for materials. This is far below what we would have normally been spending money on. But again, you can look back at that July roadmap report to see the trends there. Small increases to the cost of posting, advertising and printing. The link services, that account ending in 310, is the membership that the library pays to be part of the South Central Library system. So that has gone slightly up this last year by still less than $1,000. The outside services account, the 315, this is the account that the library pays for cleaning services. Those cleaning services are expected to go up 5 to 7% annually, so that accounts for that increase. Digital resources, this includes all of our databases as well as our participation in the Wisconsin Public Library Digital Consortium. That is a statewide consortium that all of our 15 systems throughout the state participate in for better qualifications for licensing and purchasing. Building grounds and maintenance is an increase of $20,000. We'll talk about this account a little bit more with the capital requests. But basically for the last 3 to 5 years, we've been keeping track of what is a regular maintenance cost and what falls outside of regular maintenance costs. So regular maintenance costs would be things like elevator inspections, sump pumps. Unexpected things would be things that break or major replacements, not necessarily projects like the restrooms. So what we're finding is that we're typically over budget at least $20,000 by mid-year in the 340 budget for building maintenance. And this last year, this year rather, in 2025, we've hit about $30,000 over our current budget. This is due to things like replacement of air compressors, a closed water filtration system for our plumbing, things that are expected to be long-term investments in the facility, but not necessarily a full overview, systemic look at the entire HVAC system. So basically, we're kind of fixing things as they break, not necessarily investing huge amounts up front, upwards of probably $500,000 to $1 million to really overhaul and look at the whole system in its entirety. Our copier lease with Gordon Flesh, slight increase, and then we have a reduction in savings in the 330 electronic resources account. So overall, that's a total increase in operating costs outside of any sort of wages and salaries of just under $50,000.
If I can just jump in to make a quick note. We just noticed as we're going through this that there was an additional account number added for communications in the library. And as a result of that, when things were copied from here into the line item detail, it got shifted by one line item. So if you're looking at the detail page in the book, the 20,000, instead of showing up under building and grounds, actually showed up under digital resources. So I apologize for that. We'll get that corrected and update the book.
Thanks. Okay, any questions on that before we look at revenues and capital? Okay. Thanks for driving, Diego. Okay, so looking at capital, items 2 and 3, 5, those are things that are mostly cosmetic. They're not necessarily needs. They're maintenance costs that I would include as part of an annual or master building plan, just in terms of staying on top and not deferring maintenance too long. But they're fall outside of any kind of construction requirements. So these are also things that we had at one point included with the Next Chapter project that we did in 2018, 2019, that were cut out of the budget. The AMH sorter is really the largest item, and that's what I'd like to talk about the most. That is automated materials handling. So the automated materials handling accounts for about 2.5 FTE within our Dane County formula. So if that were to go down, it takes about 2.5 full-time employees in the back to handle the amount of workload and returns that are coming through. Fun fact, Middleton Public Libraries, AMH is the oldest in the state of Wisconsin that is still operating. So it has definitely served its life. There's been several iterations of AMH's technology since then. We've worked closely with the South Central Library System and other libraries that have recently installed new AMH. There's definitely preferred vendors, but this is the sort of thing that we would go out to bid for. This is also the sort of thing that we could take part of it and invest in a new building. So we wouldn't have to start completely over brand new. The majority of the system where it returns the material down a conveyor belt, checks it automatically back into the library off of the patron account, and then sorts it by material type, thus making the carts that we roll out onto the floor a lot more efficient. That part of the technology we could take with us to a different building. We would want to plan for a design that has what's called an interior and exterior point of induction. Right now, we call that the inside and outside book drop. So that is the largest capital priority for the library at this point in time. You'll also see some needs on there that are unknown, like LED lighting corrections, HVAC needs. Again, we haven't necessarily done a full systematic master facilities cost analysis on these things, but with the recent data that we have from the MEP and all the work that we've done with the community campus plan, we know that those costs are more than what we would necessarily put in just a one-year budget cycle, perhaps. Any other questions on the capital? Okay, and if you could just take a really quick look at revenues really quick. On the next council agenda, you will see the resolution for tax exemption. So in order to receive those funds from Dane County, which are increasing by about $23,000 in 2026, the city council passes a resolution saying that we'll remain tax exempt and fund the library at the minimum fund in order to receive those funds then from Dane County. Other than that, we're looking at a fairly straightforward revenue year. I would say that $23,000 is a very slight increase, barely enough to cover half of our operating increases. It is stable at this point. We also have more tools that are in development right now that will help us work with projections and estimates into the future that we can, of course, work with Bill on. If there's no questions, that's all I have. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Next on the schedule is Planning and Community Development Authority.
All right. Thank you. We're going to be presenting the Planning and Community Development Department and CDA operating budget first, and then move to the combined capital budget for both. So if you want to start in the operating book on page 146, I'm not going to really spend any time going over planning revenues. We have minimal increases in one line item. On the next page, the planning expenditures, we are not proposing any changes. Page 148 is our narrative, and I did want to highlight one of the goals listed for 2026, which is item number 2, complete the plan for use of the TID3 Affordable Housing Extension Funds and begin implementation. This was a strategic plan priority. It's also something that's been supported by the City Council through the resolution that was approved in April of this year. And our department is supporting the CDA and the Workforce Housing Committee, as well as their 2 subcommittees that they have formed, the Housing Strategy and Finance Subcommittee and the Housing Education and Outreach Subcommittee, as they developed the Housing Action Plan. I wanted to mention this because implementation of that plan is going to involve several city council actions. Of course, one of them is adopting the plan, but it would also involve implementing some changes to the powers that are vested to the Community Development Authority by the Common Council through the city's Code of Ordinances. And depending on that action that is taken in the future by the City Council, the duties and responsibilities of some other committees within our departments may shift. In particular, thinking of the Public Arts Committee and the Workforce Housing Committee. But I wanted to mention that I don't expect that those changes would affect the CDA's budget. And so the budget that we are presenting tonight shows minimal changes to the CDA budget. So page 183 is the CDA revenue side. And you can see that the CDA is requesting an increase in the amount of $10,000 for Stonehorse Green donations. And then on the CDA expenditure side, page 184, the CDA is requesting an increase in the amount of $14,000 to operate programming at Stonehorse Green. The intent is that the CDA would subsidize programming costs out of their fund balance to the tune of about $4,000 in 2026. And just as a little bit of background, we have been supporting the Stonehorse Green programming from some larger donations that the city has received, and all of the donations that we have received have been unsolicited. So we have not gone out with an annual letter, an appeal letter requesting funding. Everything that we have received has been unsolicited. And with our new placemaking planner position, she started with the city last month. She's going to help us formalize that process through an annual appeal. So the only other item that I wanted to highlight on page 184 that's shown on the screen here is the downtown snow removal item for $17,500. This is the remaining amount for costs related to snow removal from city parking lots and city sidewalks adjacent to our facilities in downtown. Each year, the Finance and Personnel Committee has been incrementally incorporating that into the city's general fund. But the CDA is still showing that remaining amount in its budget pending action from the council to remove that remainder over to the general fund. So that's all I have on the operating side. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you go back to page 183, please? Diego, Bill. So the $700,000 in the requested budget column for transfer in, that is not accurate?
So, at the 700.
Yeah, I think that was at one point discussed of as we reached neared the end of the TID 3, that perhaps TID 3 would make a larger lump sum adjustment to the CDA. We didn't receive a decision item for that, so I don't know if that maybe it's been something that was left from a prior discussion and maybe can be removed if that is not part of a decision item for the CDA.
That was not in the requested budget
Okay.
that the CDA approved.
Okay.
And then also you mentioned with the housing, affordable housing action plan, implementing that will be a big part of 2026 and beyond. One of the recommendations coming from one of the subcommittees is to hire a full-time housing planner. And that is not reflected in the budget. Is that because we will just amend the budget next year when we get to a formal recommendation from CDA and workforce housing?
I think that that would be the correct path. We didn't include it in our budget because we don't know what the council is going
Sure.
to approve yet for the plan, and a lot of the staffing resource needs are dependent on what is in the approved plan.
Right.
So, yeah, loans, things like that, education, outreach will require more
Okay.
resources.
Great, thank you.
If I could just add to that briefly, we're anticipating that we would be creating a new fund to take the proceeds from that affordable housing extension. There is not a budget put forward for that fund at this point. That's something that can either be added in the budget process once a plan is finalized, or after the budget is adopted, there could be a budget amendment to create the budget for that fund as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before we move on to capital? Okay. Going to the capital budget book, page 7, all of the capital budget items that were requested in our department are directly tied to goals in the city's strategic plan, comprehensive plan, sustainable city plan, and other documents. And the prioritization that was assigned initially by our staff and endorsed by our plan commission are intended to reflect the city's overall prioritization in the strategic plan. So I just want to focus on priorities 1 and 2, because I think that the remaining ones are mostly self-explanatory. We're obviously happy to answer any questions that you have about any of the items that are on the list. But I do want to turn it over to our sustainability coordinator, Kelly, to discuss priority 1.
Hello, thank you. The city needs a clear roadmap and implementation plan to reach our energy goals of being 100% renewable for all operations by 2040. The complexity of the project, I feel, requires really broad expertise in local policies, technology, project development, and especially capital planning and finance, as well as life cycle analysis and design engineering. I think that a plan like this would help us minimize cost and maximize value and know how to stage the capital projects over the next 10 years. What I'm concerned about is that completing future one-off projects without a plan and without seeing a larger picture of our assets and our equipment will waste both time and money in the long run. And also, I'd say that this plan would be something for all city departments. It's not primarily just for planning. It covers the entire city. Our 2020 energy plan and our sustainable city plan from 22 through 24 were done with 100% grant funds and in-house labor. And we've accomplished or put in motion already 57 out of those 61 actions put forth in those plans. So that's just to say that our plans don't sit on a shelf, so to speak. Our comp plan and our sustainable purchasing plan were also done in-house and with volunteer committee labor. As we complete the projects from our past planning efforts in 2026, what I feel I need help with at this important moment in the climate crisis is very specific strategic capital planning with engineering expertise across all of our assets, all of our buildings and our equipment. And this would include analysis for the enterprise funds as well, the golf and the airport. A decarbonization roadmap would include long-term capital improvement planning, decarbonization strategy and timeline for the specific actions that we need on a timeline to get us to our 100% goals. It would include cost benefit analysis that includes the co-benefits of decarbonization, and it would have layered financial strategies. I think it would also help us lead by example and follow at this point the school district's example for making their 100% renewable energy goals implementation clear and planned out with what they've done with their roadmap. I think the timing is right for this effort as we look to replace or renovate buildings also in the near future and to meet our goals in a timely manner.
And then on item 2 on our priority list is the burying of overhead lines along University Avenue. And this is a complicated project that has long been a goal for the city. And we have a very narrow window of opportunity for this project while MG&E completes their grid modernization project that is already underway in some parts of Middleton. Because of the complexity of this project, the number of parties involved and the timing, I have a memo that I'm going to leave you with, a hard copy that I gave to our Plan Commission in early August that kind of describes the project in more detail in case you want the details of it. But at this point in the budget process, we do not have a full cost estimate for the work. We hope that sometime in October, we will have a full cost estimate, but that is dependent on Charter, AT&T, TDS, and other utility partners' willingness to work with us and MG&E and get us the associated cost estimates, put together a full and complete budget for this one. This project is eligible for TIP District 5 funding. It is either within the TIP district or within the half-mile buffer and was also described in the TID project plan. So it's possible that if we don't get it in time for the budget, we could bring it back as an amendment to the TIP 5 budget. So I will leave you with these, but that's all the information that we had prepared for you. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Abby and Kelly. I will say of all of the cuts recommended in the executive budget, the strategic city climate action roadmap was the most frustrating and disappointing for me because I know the Plan Commission was very interested in it. That's why it remained the #1 priority. Obviously, sustainability was interested, and I know from conversations that staff in other departments are waiting for something like this. And if the school district can do it, certainly a LEED Gold certified city can do it. If you'll go to the next page, Bill, please. So if you look at, it's a $200,000 project. High Road reconstruction is in the budget for next year, and the money, $120,000 for design work could be funded through the escrow fund that it already exists. I remember Sean Stowski saying that we have the money in hand to do the road construction project on High Road. So as we go forward with our deliberations, I'm hoping we'll be able to move that 120,000 over to a different column and then find another $80,000 in the budget, perhaps through the sustainable or the matching fund that we had for sustainability projects, perhaps with carryover maybe from the battery project. I just feel confident that we can find the funding for it. And I think this project is one of the most important ones in our budget if we are really trying to live up to our goals and try to achieve the goals in our 100% renewable energy policy. So thank you. And one question, Abby, about the art. Is there any other source besides donations? 0.5% for arts, could that apply to not the downtown public art mural, but what about the bus shelter artwork?
I would have to look at the map of the remaining shelters and whether or not they're within TIP District 5.
Okay.
That's a possibility. The other asset that we have is our new placemaking planner has a lot of grant writing experience, so she might be able to find some grant funding for that.
Great, thanks.
Question, oh, go ahead, and then I'll ask.
Well, and probably just a quick question, because I think you touched on it, the city climate action roadmap. Does that include, would that help with the community campus discussions that we're having? Would that kind of lay out some of the things that we'd be looking for if we were to do a new community campus?
I'd hope so, but I would need to know better the timeline of decision-making by council so that we would know what parameters we could ask a consultant to work on so that there's not scope creep between different consulting. I guess I can't quite wrap my head around that, but definitely I would hope if
That's
we,
something that you could
yeah.
put in if you had the information to put in.
Mhm.
Okay.
Question regarding the B cycle. So it says here 80% of it would be grant, the TAP grant could fund up to 80% of it. So it's 80% is the 300,000 our portion and they cover 80%, or it's just 300,000 for the project, 80% of that would be covered by the grant.
It's the latter. So it's a total cost of 30. We're hoping, and we have applied for 240. I've been refreshing on my cell phone to see if the MPO put their agenda out for their meeting tomorrow, because we think that they might be taking a look at those applications tomorrow, but we're hoping to have an update within the next month or two for sure.
And then what would be our ongoing costs to keep the system maintained and in place?
So B-Cycle previously required an annual operating expense, and that has been the biggest barrier for the city adopting a program. We recently learned that when they were acquired by a different company, they're no longer owned by Trek, they changed their model a bit, and Fitchburg, we found out, was able to negotiate 3 years with no operating cost. But the longevity of the capital investment that we would be making is more like 5 years. And so we've been working with B-Cycle, and they have verbally agreed to 5 years with no annual operating costs. We obviously don't have anything in writing. We wouldn't bring that forward for the council until we had a budget secured, but at least verbally, they've told us that for 5 years, they could guarantee no operating costs annually. At that point, they would need to evaluate the ridership and successes of the program, whether there are additional capital investments in the bikes or the docking stations that would be needed, and whether we would continue the program.
Yeah, because I mean, the docking stations, have a limited lifespan. They sit outside. They're subjected to pretty harsh environment.
Yep.
Obviously, the bikes sit outside until it's cold out. And
Yep.
so it's just a very high maintenance and a lot of mechanical things. And I guess what I'm saying is I support this type of initiative, but it's something that's only used for a very short window of time in our city. Plus, we're so far from any other bike infrastructure. These bikes wouldn't be the types of bikes where they're going to go from Middleton, say, to another station. So
They will. We've seen a lot of B-Cycle bikes already in Middleton coming from the Digestive Health Center, which right now is the nearest station, because they're e-bikes.
Mhm.
They're easier to ride a longer distance. But yeah, I mean, the way that they've set it up is they keep the bikes out 9 months out of the year. So on December 15th, I think it is, they take them and store them. And then on March 15th, they bring them back out. And that's based on their contract with Madison. So they said that they're open to negotiating changes to that. I wouldn't see there being big ridership in those 3 months, obviously.
Yep.
Well, and I know I spoke with an alder from Fitchburg yesterday we were at the Week Without Driving kickoff, and I asked him, how is the B-Cycle going? And he was like, it's great. In fact, he had used it to help him get to the event, which was at the Capitol Square. So no, I envision this use being, making it possible for somebody to go from Middleton to get into Madison if they want to. and points further east.
And hopefully vice versa too. is
Exactly.
Once they see that we have the stations in our downtown, they would, feel confident taking a bike from Madison and visiting the businesses that we have locally.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and I plan to start asking developers when they come forward to the Plan Commission with projects, ask them, would you be willing to incorporate a B-cycle station in your project, if it's housing related, so.
And we've already had one active construction project. The developer has reached out to us because he wants one located at his space. So we put him in touch with B-cycle.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really concerns me about this is I'm a pretty routine user of bikes and bike systems, and just in a straight up practical sense. So if the bikes aren't near places where people live, which means people who are in our workforce housing, people who don't have access to transportation, who need transportation, they need it in a practical way. That's kind of the goal. So to have this kind of as a boutique item in the downtown of our city, where it's a nice day and it'd be nice to take a bike and go for a ride and have a beer and have a bite to eat and this and that. That's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't really, serve climate action goals in the sense of really getting people access to transportation that need it. And, getting people off the roads as opposed to, maybe someone who lives in a neighborhood within Middleton who comes downtown, goes, oh, I'm gonna take the bike, I'm gonna go for a ride and come back. It has a lot of sex appeal, but it doesn't have any practicality.
With the initial phase, I think we were proposing 7 different locations.
Mhm.
But if we decided to try to expand the system like Fitchburg just did, I think there was actually just a post that Fitchburg put out about their opening up their second phase.
I think about all the housing we have along Allen Boulevard, the housing we have along University Avenue.
Yep.
The things going up around Century and Allen, where there's really gonna be people living in these types of accommodations that could actually use something like this in that kind of practical way.
Yeah, and I think we are looking at stations at all the locations that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
For sure, there's one draft in the submittal that we made for our grant application.
Yep.
Right at the intersection of Allen Boulevard and University.
Yep. And then one cautionary note I guess I would throw out there is seeing people's concern about the strategic climate action roadmap and, that there's being a red end there. I support this type of activity, but right now we're in a mode of needs and not wants. And it's not that something like this can't be done in the future, but we are not in a position to start affording to take money from other sources within the city, say Public Works, where we have projects and things that have to get done that cannot be left behind, where something like this can be achieved in the future. But I think we can't do everything at once.
Perhaps you misunderstood what I was suggesting we do with that $120,000. It was simply, we don't need to borrow $120,000 for that Public Works project, which is in District 6, the district I represent. We have $120,000 and then some. We have, I think, I don't know, 1.
I'll provide that
Yeah.
number. I don't have.
We
it off the top
have
of my head.
contributions from Red Tail Ridge, going all the way back to the Misty Valley development, and also Pheasant Crossing. So the money to do the high road reconstruction, we already have that in an escrow fund. All I was suggesting was that $120,000 doesn't need to be in our capital borrowing. We have the money. So let's move that to a different, just like how the airport related capital projects are in a different column, not in the borrowing column. That's what I was suggesting.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, questions?
No, excellent topics.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is tourism and Mari, and just time check. We are running 15 to 20 minutes behind schedule. I do
We're
think we
behind?
can make up some back. Yeah,
Sorry.
I do think we can make up some time on the back end. I think the last couple items can go pretty quickly, but just to check in on where we're at.
Would it be possible to take a 5-minute break? We've been sitting for almost.
Pleasure of the committee.
Fine, let's take a break.
And I need water. Oh, okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
No. Just me, because I think part of the balance level. It was a. Prices. Great. Market. Yeah. First I've seen what.
I mean, other than our rapid response stuff.
Ready when you are, Bill.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Mark?
I'll try to keep this pretty short as we start through. So, when we're looking at, okay, we're first on the tourism marketing. So the increases that you'll see in the different line items, the majority of those are due to inflation. Obviously, the company vehicle is a whole new item for us. We're hoping to get a hybrid and just something large enough that we can carry all of our materials. And we'll be working with the city and sustainability on that. They're already researching options for us. Destination Madison payments, as you know, we pay 17% of our revenue. That's after the city's 30%. So it doesn't take anything away from the city, but 70% of our revenue. And that increase is just an estimation based on the increase that we're hoping to see in our revenue for next year. Operations costs went down a little bit, and the biggest reason for that, let's see here. I'll look through my. Oh, we did accomplish a few of our projects this year. We had to fix our patio, things like that. I don't know if you want to go. Yep, there we go. So if we're looking under operations, building maintenance, we finished a project. We're adding a project. Building maintenance project is what we're calling things that are in the depot. So we have finished the renovations to the front part of the depot with the museum aspect, but we're hoping to commission a history video that will feature both downtown and the railroad. And then that will be available on YouTube, on our website, in the depot. And then the history, Middleton Area Historical Society will be given access to it to use however they'd like to as well. Research, obviously, we're going down on that because we are going to wrap up the organizational assessment. So the only thing we'll have in 26 is the strategic plan. Let's see here. The only other significant decrease in utilities, I just looked over the last 4 years and we've just never spent $7,000 on electric and heat. So we just went ahead and made that change. If we want to go to tourism marketing, I can explain that addition in advertising. So part of this will be projected inflation costs for not only placing ads, but some design projects. We're rolling over a project that we had approved this year, but we decided not to do because we were worried a little bit about income because Q1 and Q2 were soft. And so we decided we'd roll it over into next year. We're putting it as part of our overall budget because we've been coming in under budget every year. We might be able to pay it out of our budget. But the commission actually approved this budget based on taking that out of our tourism fund balance, if need be. Same with the car.
Public relations went down just a smidge because we're going to remove sweepstakes and one sweepstake and do more things in-house. And let's see here. What is next? I think that's everything. Told you it'd be quick. Questions, please.
Madam Mayor.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mari. I have received so many compliments on your maps for the art walks, and the other two are not coming to mind. I think there's a history one. So much so that our seniors have reached out and they give them out to new neighbors. And I'm sharing that because I shared it with the Good Neighbor Fest future president for 26. And she said, this is exactly what I need. And they were hoping to do a like one. So I'm sharing that because as we're bringing new neighbors in, they're excited to see that. And then they're bringing people when they come to visit. So lots of good things I've been hearing, but I don't always share. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, people think print is dead and maps are dead. They are not, trust me. Any other-
I just
Yes.
wanted to ask Mari, so I know every year you've asked about the permitting of events, taking that out of tourism, and it sounds like maybe that is going to happen soon.
Oh, I did not know that.
In progress. But yes.
I will be pulling for you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have EMS.
Good evening. A quick introduction. My name is Chris Odell. I'm the officer in charge for Middleton EMS here. I'm happy to be here with you folks tonight. Dale, could you start with the Capitol, please? So it's nice to round out a project, and I feel that the Zoll AED project, this would be the second year in the closure of this institution of this initiative. These defibrillators started back in 2002. They're aged units, and last year, per budget cycle, we replaced 14 of them. The request this year is to replace the remaining 14. That said, there are going to be a small amount of these that are going to sit still fit for use, but kind of end of life. So I've been working with Kylie from the Parks Department as well too to work on some initiatives in terms of maybe taking these end of use units and trying to put them somewhere strategically at the Lakeview Park shelters, somewhere where that might be exposed to some level of additional traffic. But I think it might be a great place versus having them just sit idle. So we're keep you posted on that pilot project. Also on our capital, we're looking at requesting some dollars for kind of bolstering our exterior security program within our EMS station. Obviously, we have valuable resources as well as controlled substances that reside within that building. Upon build out, there was a lot of the infrastructure that was put into place. However, we never found the dollars to allocate to do a perimeter security system. There's some inherent benefit to that. I think also not just keeping security around the perimeter, there actually might be some angles to provide good coverage to the rear of the fire station and also to the kind of the community city-owned parking lot, which is just adjacent us as well. Discussions also with IVS, or the tech firm, state that there would be a good opportunity for us to directly link in through the police department so they could be passively monitoring our vestibule area, because it's not uncommon that people show up at our door and our ambulances are gone on call. So this is an opportunity for them to really passively monitor and kind of keep good gauge on what's happening around our facility. So I think those are the large initiatives for our capital. Is there anything else you'd like me to go over on that, Bill?
No, we usually just focus on the 2026 projects. So unless there's something else in an out year you want to highlight.
I think that'd be perfect. Thank you. So we could move into operations then and the ambulance replacement. So as Chief Harris has stated as well too, we are not immune to these rising costs. There are a multitude of different scenarios as to why. And obviously we're looking at a line budget increase of $47,000 because we're right now sitting at a rather sizable shortfall. We've been meeting proactively with our ambulance manufacturers. We're trying to get those numbers really dialed in right now. So I feel that that'll put us on target in theory to have us ready to go for our 3-year build out time when these ambulances should arrive. We're using some innovative technology as well too. We're looking at instituting some solar panels for our HVAC units atop the units, which is going to help really kind of augment some of the power distribution issues. And we're really working, trying to be cutting edge, but also remain budget focused as well too. So that's what we're looking at for the ambulance. Any questions on that? Our EMS deputy chief. So thank you for the consideration of this very needed position and opportunity within our department. It should go without saying that Steve Wunsch, upon his retirement, has large shoes to fill. Both myself and Jennifer, the other OIC who's behind me to the right, we're doing, I think, a noble job keeping things running, but I think what we're learning is that there's a defined need to have additional stratification within our department. Most like departments, be it volunteer through full-time career, have some stratification, some hierarchical processes as well too. So to start to build that stratification, I think is going to be very beneficial for us and for generations moving forward. It creates an opportunity for career pathways for those that are in the job and being mentored. It eliminates that single threat of liability as well too. Having some redundancies in our organization would be very beneficial for us. So obviously we're requesting that as well. And then maybe we can go to revenues unless you have any questions on the chief's role. Okay. And again, we're starting off with a strong track record here of revenues, again, moving into 2026 as well. Robust call growth, call volume is obviously benefiting us to some degree as well. We continue to have some upward pressures as well too in terms of call volume. So we're working through those obviously down the road. We're staying attuned to what might be happening in that political climate as well too federally in terms of potential issues with some diminishment of federal dollars. So we've been sitting in on conference calls and trying to understand what that's going to look like for us from a federal perspective. But we are in tune to it, and I think our numbers are strong right now. Any questions on that?
Sorry, I just want to make a quick note on revenues that, so the numbers on the screen for the requested budget, we continue to have additional conversations between EMS and finance, looking at revenues for both the ambulance billing and the township charges, and those are reflected in the proposed budget. So some of the increases are not shown here, but they are reflected in the numbers within the proposed budget.
Okay. I had a question on page 67 under the goals. It mentions that currently we submit payroll through a paper and pencil procedure. Is that literal or?
The backloading of this information is in fact done with a paper and pencil spreadsheet.
Okay.
So obviously through this ERP process as well too, we're really looking to bring this more towards something more modern time that we can automate. That becomes on the top of our list as we step into this discussion with Plant Moran as well too, about trying to find something that is going to, again, just be more limber for us and hopefully be a large time savings. So that is in fact the truth, and we hope to pivot from that rather quickly.
Okay, and then item 4 that's showing on the screen, to maximize reimbursement. Is that additional anticipated revenue included in the budget, or would there be perhaps additional?
So those are pending dollars, I believe, that have not hit yet. We don't have final dollars yet back from the CPE. You know, there are several different programs that are out there, the FAP Funding Assistance Program as well too, that are kind of always out there, and they live in that Fund 209 for us.
Okay.
And those dollars will go in to pay for different programs. So example being, we are going to be taking delivery of some new defibrillators. So those dollars will go in and those will fund our extended warranty programs and some of the ancillary things. So those can sit and can kind of roll over from year to year.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have submitted documentation of costs for 2023 and 2024. Those are still going through a desk review. We're hoping to receive some additional funds based on those cost reports during 2025. We've been cautious about projecting that forward into 2026 because some of the federal changes in the Medicaid program and just the uncertainty resulting from that.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, sorry. Madam Mayor has a question.
I just want to say thank you to you and the other OIC. You are both doing an excellent job. And Steve is dearly missed, and he does have those large shoes. So much appreciated for all that you're doing. And I'm glad to see that we are looking at that, I think you called it stratification approach in 2026.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the schedule is the police department.
Should we go with operating first?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate your time this evening. I know it's not an easy task, so I really admire what you're able to do up there. So for our operating costs this year, we're really looking at something different. That's an identified need. A city our size, we need to have a police department that has a training division. And right now, we don't have one. We simply just do not have one. And that's concerning to me for a multitude of different reasons. One being to develop best practice and to be innovative in our solutions to public safety. We absolutely need to have a diverse way of thinking, and we need to be universal in our training because it really does mitigate risk. The number one thing cities are held liable for failure to train. And right now, we have a system where officers are collaborating as a pool to get training together. It does a couple different things. One, it doesn't make sure that training is universal throughout our department, which is a key component to making sure that everyone's doing the same best practices. But number two, it also takes them away from what they should be doing, and that's being out on the road and making sure that the people of this community are safe. So for me, our big ask this year for our operating costs is a dedicated training officer to establish a training division. When I look at what we're trying to do in this city, I'm amazed by the culture of transportation and trying to be diverse with that transportation. And so for me, I see it as an opportunity to make sure officers have the requisite training to ensure that everybody, if you're commuting by vehicle or bicycle or walking, that our officers know exactly how to keep that diverse population very safe. And so it's an absolute need for us, and I'm hoping that it's considered to add into our operating costs. Outside of that, and to complement that, we are asking for 2 part-time community service officers, which are going to complement what our officers can do out on the road. So a quick example of how these positions can be extremely important is if we look at parking, right? Not only is it a revenue stream that we can bring to the city, right? But also what people don't understand is it can be an absolute safety risk. So if we have vehicles that are parked illegally too close to curbs, next thing you know, we have people entering into the roadway, and visibility is a massive, massive issue. With CSOs, we can get them into different spots in the city by utilizing bicycles to ensuring that people are traveling safely in all forms. So it's a big win for us as far as being able to have a larger reach throughout the city, but it's an awesome recruitment tool because they come to us, they've invested into us and us into them, and then they make great police officers as almost a career trend up. So I'm really hoping that can be considered as well. But at the bottom line of it is our operating costs totally is very minimal from this year in the request from last year with a very minimal difference. Bill, do you know the exact number? It's like 37,000 less. Is that what you're seeing?
I don't know if we have that off the
Okay.
top of our head, but we can certainly find that.
Excellent. So it's for our actual total operating costs, what we could gain is very minimal. Are there any questions on the operating budget? Yes.
Thank you for the example of the CSO officer or what they could do to supplement the sworn officers. Would another example that maybe dovetails with your multimodal transportation desires, what about a car parked in a driveway blocking a sidewalk, which I see all the time? And that's a barrier for anybody who is using a wheelchair to get around. Is that something a CSO could help with?
100%. And I think quality of life is a big one for us here. And this position massively improves quality of life because for emergency officers would consider that example pretty low priority when you have other things going on, right? But it's high priority for that position. And that's exactly what they're intended to do, is really to improve quality of life. But also they are an awesome first point of contact for your low-level calls with people just walking in the downtown areas and things of that nature, just to keep things calm as a presence and make sure that we are doing our job, getting out into the public.
What about things like, because I hear from people a lot about concerns with dogs not on leash in the conservancy or going to dog parks without having purchased a license.
All of that. And what makes it great is the response time's then compressed, right? Because people aren't waiting on an officer to get free from whatever they're working on. The response time is less. So it's a great program. A lot of other departments have it, and hoping that we can get that as well.
Okay, and I just wanted to add that you heard me say I was disappointed to see the climate roadmap cut from or recommended to be cut from the capital projects. The training position was my big disappointment in the executive budget on the operations side, because you and I had spoken. That was one of the first things you said when the two of us met, and it makes a lot of sense. And I do think I think it's a need. I think we should be able to find a way to pay for that using some of the tools that Alder Crow and I had mentioned a while ago, recycling charge and or wheel tax. I think there's a way to be able to raise the money to pay for, at the very least, the training position, and I would hope the CSO position. And I think the public would be very supportive. We always hear how people want to support our public safety officials, especially the police. And if we know that a CSO can be out, or two part-time CSOs can be out there taking care of the things that we all recognize are lower priorities, but like you said, the quality of life issues, I think people would be very supportive.
And I'd just like to add one more thing about the training officer, and I think this is often overlooked, is the community outreach portion of that position, right? So right now, we are living in a time of extreme violence, and it gets me nervous, and all I think about is my job to make sure that we have the tools in place to protect the city. But the city is most protected when it's informed. That training officer is going to be the person that's going to be the first point of contact to go to all the businesses and to give different types of training on how to deal with all different types of emergencies. And right now, we just don't have the resources to do that. And to me, that's extremely important, because people that know how to keep each other safe creates a safe city. It takes all of us in it together. So I really appreciate your comments. Are there any other questions on? Okay. Can we go
Anybody
to
else?
capital? And I'll be brief with this one as well. For 2026, we have a couple different items, and I'll just explain them, but they're on there for you to see. They're pretty self-explanatory, but I'd like to touch basically on two. An absolute need that we need to have, every one of our officers needs to have the same duty firearm. Right now, our officers have to purchase their own firearm, and that is an absolute problem for a lot of different reasons. For one, it really disrupts continuity of training among all officers. If all officers are shooting the same weapon, we're all able to manipulate the same weapon in case of an emergency. Plus, if we need to replace them,
officers don't have to use a different tool that they haven't been training with. So if we have one firearm that we provide all officers, everyone trains the exact same way. So the people of the city get the same response no matter what. It's an absolute need and integral part. I'm hoping that we can keep that. And then I'd also like to touch on the digital traffic signs. The digital traffic signs absolutely align with keeping our people safe when they're commuting. It dovetails into what our initiative is for our police department in collaborating with our elected officials. I want our elected officials to have immediate access on data that we're running out in the field. So when our people are contacting our elected officials, we can send them to the data so that they can get back to their constituents with concrete evidence of work that we're doing out there. And it provides the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. So I think those two items in particular are of rather importance, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the others as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chief.
Next on the schedule is Parks and Recreation.
Hello, how are you tonight? So I am planning on starting and focusing with operational budget. And within there, our staffing requests that we have to maintain our current level of service. The three staffing areas that I'm focusing on are marketing and outreach, conservancy lands, and then our seasonal operations support staff for 2026. The marketing and outreach specialist was our top priority in converting that. It's noted in, on page 127, that we are requesting a full-time position, but we would be willing to look at a permanent year-round part-time position and growing it. It's a current 1,200 hour position, and we're looking to get it more consistent at 25 to 27 hours per week year-round. This position would support the city's marketing communications manager by managing our 6 social media outlets and program and project promotion. And then most importantly, our launch of our new sponsorship program that's currently underway. The position is also essential to increasing community engagement and participation. And our current intern has already delivered measurable impacts across our social media, and they're driving engagement that directly is tied to our revenue increase, which is this year $113,000 north of that. And it also is largely supporting the city's overall revenue increase. Without this position, outreach efforts will be inconsistent and unsustainable. Program participation and revenue growth will decline. The sponsorship program will potentially be delayed or not developed, becoming missing revenue opportunity. And it affects our goal of financial sustainability within our department. And residents are less aware of programs, services, and limiting access and equity. So that is our top priority that we have in our operational budget request. Our second staffing and our second priority request for staffing is a new full-time conservancy lands technician. This was requested last year, and this position would help with invasive species control, prescribed burn, native seed collection, volunteer coordination, and supervision of seasonal staff, and also trail maintenance and equipment operations. Why this is important is the city manages over 850 acres of conservancy land, and it's continually expanding our conservancy land, and additionally our trail system, which is seeing 3 miles of additional trails just this year. And our current staffing cannot keep pace with all of these growing responsibilities. This position would also be necessary to help with the Oak Hill Correctional Institute work crew, overseeing that and continuing. We recently had a meeting with Oak Hill Correctional Institute, and they are looking to expand the program. And we need additional staff, and if it's not expanded, they may look elsewhere with that program besides the city of Middleton. So we need to be proactively looking into how to sustain that, as they provide critical hours to managing our public lands throughout the city. And this Conservancy Lands Technician position is basically helping with our reduce our deferred maintenance and keep our sustaining our current level of service and operations. And then our third request is to increase wages and hours for seasonal staff in all of our field services for Parks, Forestry, Conservancy. This is on page 134, and our park ranger program as well. Our system continues to expand with trail mileage, multi-use path mileage, and acreage of Conservancy lands and parks coming online in the upcoming years. Seasonal staff provides that critical support to full-time staff, and some of those duties are with trail maintenance, restoration, land restoration, snow and ice removal, and public safety. And we're trying to keep the pay competitive for those seasonal positions. So raising that wage up and keeping in line with the area in Dane County. And then we that was our third staffing request. We do have another staffing request lower on the priority list, but those three were the key ones that I'm looking to request in our operational budget for 2026. And then further going into our operations, two other key areas that I want to focus on are our forestry operations budget. We're seeing if we stay, and that's on page 136. In addition to the staffing that we're requesting operational growth in the budget. This will help us with adding 14 additional tree planting to equal 100 tree plantings annually. And then it also helps keep us where our goal is to keep on a 6-year cycle of routine tree pruning. And if we're not able to do that, we can't continue with our efforts on shading, tree coverage, our tree canopy coverage, our goal of getting in that, getting to that space. So we are really, it's detrimental that we look at an increase in that budget because from this year, 2025 to 2026, it's a negative north of $100,000. So we are definitely going to be hurting on our pruning and maintenance cycle, and we've seen what damage that does in the city with storm damage that is directly related to our costs with storm damage cleanup. So that was another operational request. That was a priority of ours. And then additionally, I want to highlight, I know this is a lower priority, but Conservancy lands, we just completed our Conservancy lands plan and adopted that. We haven't seen an increase in our Conservancy lands budget in over 5 years, other than an Oak Hill increase that was a federal mandate for the wage increase of the sergeant. So we even if it's partial, and we're still looking to continue increasing the operational budget for our Conservancy lands. And I think so that kind of covers our operational budget, our focus for 2026 for our department. And then going into our capital, I just want to shortly highlight a few projects. We have a lot on for both Parks, Rec, Forestry, and Conservancy. I'll start with Parks, Rec, Forestry. What the ADA transition plan and audit is a federal regulation that we have a plan in place that prioritizes all of our ADA needs throughout the system. And I think it's important that we involve the community and understand what all of our ADA compliance needs are throughout our entire Parks Rec system and trail system as well. So we can identify moving forward with a annual plan for improvements there. Playground replacement is 3 years behind, so that is really important to get caught up. We have 27 total playgrounds. If we fall behind, we're just compounding that deferment on replacing the replacement program. And additionally, the compacted articulated loader is a key piece of equipment we're looking at adding to looking at adding this year, and that equipment would help with everything from snow removal, which we're really lacking in equipment to keep up with all of the multi-use path systems. So that would help with our response time there. And then it also would be used for tree planting with our limited staff that we have as a half of a forester. And seasonal staff supporting our tree planting program. That would be really crucial to being more efficient. That's just naming a few uses for the equipment, but that, and then another one I'll highlight is Lakeview Park entrance reconstruction. That is something that can look a little bit further into the total amount requested and to simplify the design, but I think it's really key in our community park. Lakeview Park is our largest and most active community park, and the entrance is severely dangerous. We've had people already hit the shelter and driving through. We had a person yesterday drive all the way down to the splash pad and through where pedestrians are. We really need to look at a design that's safe for the community, and we can incorporate things such as the scrap stop where our and beautification along with that, but safety is the key for why that's prioritized as number 3. And then leading into the Conservancy lands capitals. So our top one on there, safety for bridge redecking and repair. I just want to note that the decking that is on the 5 bridges in the creek corridor is original to the bridges that are the entire project. So that decking, it can't be simply replaced. The bolts are underneath the deck. And so it has to be set up where we're replacing all those, the decking, and it would be most effective if we do all 5 in 1 year for bidding and mobilization and communication with the community. That one is kind of the only one I want to highlight, and then I'm happy to take questions both on operational and capital budget for your department.
Appreciate what you've put together and the big ask in terms of FTE and the need for staff. It's a challenge. I guess we'll have to put a lot of time and thought into it. I'm not going to even attempt to get into it at this level in the finance and personnel, and I think it's something Common Council can look at as a whole. When I think of, the impact of your department and division and the work your staff does, it's kind of the face of Middleton in many, many ways. And so I would encourage everybody to think about that when we look at how we want to approach the funding in terms of, what we really hear from our constituents as they walk through the parks, they use our facilities and things like that. So I think there's a lot of things here that are infrastructure based that they don't always see. And those are some big ticket items. So I think we have to kind of think about priorities in that sense. So I won't get into the details of it with you, but just something to kind of keep in mind. So thank you for your diligence and your work on this. I really appreciate it.
I have some questions. Can we go to page 120 of the operating budget book? So looking at just the recreation revenue, and if I understand the new position or the move from an intern to a full-time position for marketing.
And
Yeah.
it's a $1,200 position. and
Okay.
We're looking at part-time, full-time is in the budget right now.
Okay, so looking at that, that would be strictly on the recreation side or no?
No, that position, directly is and currently supports all of our conservancy, our parks, our forestry, communication efforts, with all of our field services and all of our rec.
Okay, but if you look at this page, it's showing a $113,000 increase in revenue, mostly coming from the recreation program revenue. And well, I guess it's across the board, but I guess my question is, Kylie, to what extent is this projected increase in 2026 anticipating having that marketing person to continue to do all the work that they've been doing, maybe even increase the amount of work they've been doing to generate more revenue generate more interest in recreation and therefore generate more revenue? Like if
Yes.
we don't put the position in on the expense side, does the projected revenue for 26 take a hit?
I believe it does, and I have to analyze that a little bit further. What really is the issue is that we have an overqualified person in the position, and the way that it's structured is for a college level student. And the pay of that as a college level student when they come in, and that transition, we take a large gap of that transition period. There's a lot of missed communication. I think that we would see a decrease in that revenue and decrease in efficiency in our department with all of our programming. It directly ties into kind of all of our positions because it takes a little piece off of each job and each role. And so that's challenging to answer exactly a ratio of what that would look like. If we lost that position, maybe we'd go back a couple years to where that structure was with a college student and we had a really unbalanced and inconsistent messaging. So I could kind of look back a few years on that. And then additionally, where was I going? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's
there.
okay. Thinking about the
Sponsorship program.
Oh, yes.
So that revenue is not added in here. So we're rolling out that program in the next month or two. And it's all in draft mode, ready to go to Pure FC and our finance committee for you guys to review as well. We I have a question mark for how much that could actually generate in the 2026 year. So I didn't put additional revenue in, but that would be a bucket that we would be targeting to help with our cost recovery on all of our programs, including the youth center.
Okay. And then thinking about capital projects, can the tree planting be moved to the capital budget since trees presumably are intended to last for?
From where are you looking at? From
I thought the tree planting.
it was a part of our a percentage of our operational, a small percentage for just 13 additional trees, I think, total.
Right.
It could be added to our capital.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that can be
But-
taken out and put in the capital budget since trees are a long-term
But
investment.
I would disagree with that direction, as our main priority is for maintenance of our current system. And if we're going to only look at a small section of funding, it needs to be geared towards pruning and maintenance care until we can get to, if that's the only funding that we're gonna get.
Well,
yeah.
no, the point would be to pull out what could legitimately be a capital project and what is not a maintenance project like the pruning
Mhm.
to free up a little funding on the operations side and make it less likely that your request for pruning will be cut. So I'm just trying to think of ways to rearrange things where we can. And then the ADA compliance capital project, it seems to me anytime we've got something that is compliance, I don't see why we would cut that. Can you explain
Oh,
this?
for number 4.
Yep, number 4.
So we have an abundance of ADA compliance that we have to truck through with our entire system. We're working on, I'm rolling over a project to spring of 2026 for ADA compliancy at Firefighters Memorial Park for the soccer stadium. This project is for Penny Klein Park for ADA. We could continue to go down in the list of ADA compliancy and continue to fund that. It's a need. I'm just taking a look at how many projects we can accomplish. And I think my goal was to get the ADA transition plan into effect, so we have a really good identified target of what projects should be coming in what order.
Okay, so you would be okay with putting off the project number 4 to a future budget 2027, let's say, because you need item number 1 to help you identify all those compliance projects. Okay.
And I was gonna ask a similar question about, what the ADA compliance, I'm guessing are the things that you've identified already, partly. But the plan would help you identify kind of priorities and.
Yeah, that project identified in number 4, I think is a 2021 or 2022 project.
Yeah.
That was prioritized, so.
And a question on the marketing position. How does that dovetail with the city's marketing director too? Is it because there's so much that you guys do that?
I think everybody does a lot for sure.
Right.
That's hard to, but I will advocate for my department, certainly. We work very, very closely with the marketing and communications director, Brent. He plays a key role in our success of our department, and our intern position right now works very collaboratively with that role. And we just have an extensive amount of additional work. We did a full picture asset inventory. They took pictures of our entire system, drone footage of every single park, and updating the Google and the website. And there's just an extensive amount. If we can't do that, that just reduces our ability to communicate. Or we have public input meetings that we can't roll out several of our projects without public input meetings. And public involvement in the process, which takes a lot more effort. Brent is part of 11 departments, and he has a 40-hour week. And I'm speaking, Brian, you want to jump in, but he has 40 hours a week, and our position is an extra 22 hours a week. So there's not enough capacity.
I guess I would just caution against any kind of redundancy, but if they're working together.
Oh, yeah.
So that it's,
just
they're not doing the same thing, two people doing the same thing.
Yeah, just a couple comments I'd want to make too, that it's my, that'd be my ask as well, is to make sure that if that position for the Parks Department is funded, that we're very clear about the job responsibilities. Brent's responsibilities are main high level communications and implementations for the city. That this position, like Kylie has mentioned, is a little bit more discreet in terms of what it's being asked to do, specific things like the sponsorship program, which is unique to the Parks Department. So I think there's definitely some interplay and some collaboration between those two positions. But yeah, the communications manager would be focused on kind of the high level citywide communications. If there are specific discrete things that the park department needs to work on because it's a revenue generation for their programming, we could figure that out.
And to Randall's point, we also now have additional staff for downtown and Stonehorse Green, motion communications and development. So it looks like, we have people in multiple positions now within the city that are kind of all doing the same thing. And so I think we have to strive for some efficiencies.
Maybe the titles.
I would disagree that they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing in that they are communicating and marketing, but they're doing it for different purposes. And so I would not phrase it that way.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the placemaking planner and the communications manager are two different positions that have two very distinct responsibilities and roles. You know, as with all positions in the city, there's interplay and collaboration, but the responsibilities are very different.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Wanted to start on the capital side for streets. So I'll first kind of go over the initiatives for streets. So in 2026, our road construction projects will be solely focused on resurfacing. So think a mill and overlay where we're not completely rebuilding a street. Also in 2026, we have planned the design work for the high road reconstruction. So that is that $120,000 amount you see there. Looking a little further out, just to mention, the Century Avenue Bridge replacement will be in 2027, and the resurfacing of Century Avenue is slated for 2029. That's in conjunction with the county. Further down the list under Public Works Other, so we have a few items, a few legacy items, and then a few new additions that I wanted to highlight. First being the traffic safety study or screening, I should say. So that is something that's kind of new to our community that we've seen done in other communities. What that essentially does is would be hiring an outside consultant to come in and evaluate our city's intersections. This is done under through the lens of safety, and then also through potential for safety improvements that could be funded through federal or state grants. In particular, what this does is it ranks the intersections by crash history and then also economic loss in terms of fender benders and things like that. And that would provide our staff kind of a guidebook for where to look for safety improvements at intersections throughout the city. We've recently begun working with the school district, the police department, planning and engineering staff to kind of evaluate traffic safety issues as they come up. So a screening study like this would be immensely helpful for that group to kind of guide where we look throughout the city to make improvements. Another kind of new addition to the capital budget would be the umbrella program. We've labeled it pedestrian safety improvements. So this kind of takes previous items that were in the budget, such as our RFBs, and kind of putting it under one umbrella where staff in conjunction with the Public Works Committee and Council can identify issues throughout the year, and then have an avenue to fund improvements, things like raised crosswalks, bump outs, other improvements that can be made to improve pedestrian access throughout the city. And lastly, just wanted to highlight also the on-street accessible parking stalls. So this was something that had been raised in the Public Works Committee. Funding for this would essentially provide for increased accessible parking in both the downtown area, but then throughout the city. So that funding provides the able to complete all areas that were identified by the committee. We scroll down to the fleet additions. The trucks, the additional trucks were tied to a staffing request. So that is kind of what that is for. The additional pieces of equipment are for the Municipal Operations Center. Yeah, that's kind of the capital budget at a high level. Happy to take questions now, or I can jump over to our operating initiatives.
I'm just wondering, how old are the TIA guidelines?
The,
Charles might know.
I-
The
That-
TIA guidelines, do you know when they were last updated?
2005.
Okay. Thanks. That's pretty old.
that is pretty old. Looking at our operating budget initiatives, the majority of them are some minor items. I do want to highlight the assistant city engineer position that would be jointly funded from the general fund and then also from the stormwater utility. Do you want to quick talk about kind of what that person's responsibilities would be?
Sure, I guess. Just as an overview, comparing us to similar communities in Fitchburg and Verona, we have a pretty light engineering staff in the city of Middleton. We do rely a lot on outside consultants for construction-related services. MSA is doing our reviews now for developments in the city. And that just really with some of the projects that have been going on recently, city staff are not able to be out on site every day. Having another assistant engineer to take some of that work off of the technicians, and being able to be on site and answer questions would be very helpful. Another point of emphasis there is all three of our engineering technicians are nearing retirement. One of them is retiring this winter. So that's a lot of institutional knowledge that we'll be missing as well. And with that comes some inefficiencies for new staff. I think those are probably the main items that I would want to point out there.
Yeah, that kind of covers our operating. Happy to answer questions on both three.
How are we doing on projects that were promised for this year, getting those done, and ones that aren't gonna get done, getting those moved into the 2026 year? Anything being lost, put off, or not completed as a result of current budget proposal?
No, at this point, nothing is being kind of shifted over to 2026. I guess as part of the 2026 budget, the only thing would be Mound Drive design work would be shifted out, probably further in the 5-year plan. But in terms of other projects, everything else is following our 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Ben, one thing I would suggest, you mentioned the coordination with the school district and the police department. I didn't see that, maybe it's in there, but I didn't see that in the narrative. I
Sure.
think I would recommend putting it in there because it's certainly an important innovation. And I think it's worth highlighting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
I want to say thank you to Public Works, our new leadership. I know you've been very flexible and open to feedback. And that collaborative effort, that spirit that Alder Hanairo was pointing to is spot on. I really appreciate that you're working with me on that pedestrian safety, obviously the multimodal, and being open-minded to having that engineering consulting support to give your staff a break and get caught up on pending. That's so many things going on, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thanks. You
Yeah,
bet.
I guess from a stormwater perspective, I'll try to keep this pretty high level. The highlights that I would make for our budget initiatives are the additional crew members. Right now, we have one crew member, our stormwater utility foreman. He does a lot of the day-to-day maintenance and some of the smaller projects that would not be as efficient to hire out. For example, we have the Misty Valley and Hidden Oak stormwater on here. Those are being designed this fall.
Those are larger scale projects that we would still be hiring out to a consultant. But for example, if anyone's been to Costco recently on the south side of UW Health Court, that's one that our stormwater utility foreman helped out. It's a pretty simple design of regrading that. However, with just him, it's pretty inefficient because he has to keep hopping in and out of the skid steer, loading the truck himself, driving the truck, dumping it, coming back. It takes a lot of extra time. So with 2 new crew members, we could have people running different pieces of equipment at the same time. We could get a lot more done for less cost than we would hiring things out. I guess I would just point out that we have the ditch maintenance is going down by $1,000. The only reason for that is it's a duplicate account. We're going to continue doing ditch maintenance. Everything else on there are project design, and then storm sewer maintenance is just getting funded by the utility. We don't have the staff to do the maintenance work itself. That'll still be done by the streets crew. We could jump over to revenue quick, just point that out. So our biggest revenue sources is from the stormwater fee. That is going to be relatively consistent and provide us with a good funding source to continue with a lot of these projects that have been delayed from previous years. There is nothing in grants for 2026, but I do want to point out that there are grants available that we're looking at. The flood resiliency grant is one in particular. That's something I'm looking at for Confluence Pond and South Pond, some of those facilities we have that are in line with Pheasant Branch, the North and South Forks. So that's something that will likely be coming. I just didn't have it in here at that time. Over to capital. So from a capital standpoint, we're keeping funding the same for some of the ditch and outfall maintenance. We're in budget for that this year. I think those numbers are good for our purposes. If we have new staff members, that'll help gauge for future years on what we can actually accomplish. The other big ones on here are the dump truck and the ATV. The dump truck right now, we're kind of at the whim of streets and the utility for if they're using it, we can't take a dump truck from them. Otherwise, we would have to rent it out. So having this would allow us pretty much consistently work throughout the year. The Polaris ATV, that is mainly for pesticide and herbicide application. So right now, we are either stuck with using a backpack sprayer or driving our trucks down the paths. Not really a big fan of driving our trucks down the multi-use paths if we can help it. Just know if I was walking down there and a truck was driving at me, I wouldn't like that either. So that just gives us more flexibility with those efforts in maintaining invasive species.
Is that one of those electric ATVs, or is it?
Yes, we were planning for a electric UTV.
That's good. I have a question. Are you still going?
I guess water resources, there's nothing I needed to really point out there. That's the only things I would point out is I discussed with Bill moving the Confluence Pond to the stormwater utility rather than being a capital project.
Okay. I had a question about drones. Because I went to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities meeting in Milwaukee a few weeks ago and attended a session on innovative stormwater funding and technology. And one of the things they talked about was using remote sensing tools to do stormwater management. And they said you can use some municipalities are using drones for routine inspections and maintenance, monitoring maintenance. They have safety benefits because you won't be slipping around. They're efficient because 2 staff people can spend 1 hour using a drone on a 15-acre site, and it takes 4 hours for those 2 to walk the site. Quality may be higher. So I just mentioned that because I was really excited and started talking to some of the presenters, And the first question they had is, well, do you already have a drone? And I said, well, I know our police department has a good one, and I don't know if that would be usable for this, but I just mentioned that as something to consider in the future.
Yeah, I guess that's not something that I've thought of previously. We've been talking about some pesticide applications on Confluence Pond. I'm sure if you've driven by there, seen all the lily pads and growth on there.
Mhm.
That's something that would be done with an outside consultant, probably spraying from a drone to get coverage there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, definitely for future years.
Yeah. And they were also talking about, confirming, for example, that the pond capacity is to its design. And actually measuring how deep water is using the drone. So it sounds like, and I remember from talking with the chief at, I think it was when the library bookmobile was kicked off. Their drone is really good. It's
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anything
highly
that
capable.
could make our inspections easier and more useful for staff would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, thank you.
So we are getting close to the end. Next department is water and sewer utilities. Mike? Okay, we'll start with operating. If you would just highlight your operating request.
Sure. As we look at, well, and good evening, everyone. I know it's getting late. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Most precious thing you have. As we look at the water utility, budget initiatives, we are looking at adding, a full-time office staff person to support our only, billing manager. I think this position was created from the get-go with one billing person. And that's what it's been for basically since the utility started, I believe. Obviously, we've grown just a little bit, and Sarah is definitely in over her head. We are finding that we need more meter change appointments. We have more people calling and asking questions. People want more information. So that is where we're looking to add that extra staff person. What else you wanna do, Bill? I guess we could talk about too, we're looking at the simplified rate case study that is coming. I can't stress enough, and this is what keeps me awake at night, is the weight of projects that the water utility will see in the next few years. We have a very demanding capital budget, as you've seen, and we're gonna get to it. But we have to have the staff to be able to do that as well. With the SRC, hopefully to bring in extra revenue to the utility to cover some of these costs and offset. Talking to Bill, the water utility will probably look into having to do some short-term borrowing. We haven't looked into it completely yet, but it's something that we know we're gonna have to do. We're kind of waiting to see what the rate case study brings up first. When we look at some of the accounts for increases, some things have gone up, some things have gone down. Meters are getting more expensive. We're needing to change out more. We have more people coming to the city, obviously. I don't know if you want me to break down every single one of those. Just the big ones. The toilet rebate, the water audit rebate, we just haven't seen those basically move in the last couple of years. So we're just slowly adjusting them to fit a little better. Outside services,
because of the demands of the projects that we're taking on and other things that pop up in the year as far as construction with some of these larger buildings being taken down. We're having to source more of our project engineering to outside services. So that's why you see the increase there. That's mainly engineering that we're looking at.
Sewer?
On the sewer side, got 40,000. Again, we're just adjusting based on the trends we've seen since I've been in. We've had staffing changes that have kind of affected some of these areas, where we're having to do more training with our people, more schooling. Yeah, it's all mainly just adjustments from what we've been seeing with the trends of the last couple of years. I know some go up, some go down.
And if I can just jump in, and I believe one thing that normally we see as a large increase, because it's a large part of the budget, are the fees from Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. I think as the time this was put together, we didn't have that number yet. So that is something that we will update you on during the process, that number. And then we usually have a corresponding revenue increase associated with that increase in MMSD fees.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
We do get that number. Usually we get it estimated first and then we get a more accurate number. I have not seen either yet for the year. They should be coming very shortly. Generally, we have that out by Thanksgiving. I think we have those rates all figured out and what it'll cost the city. And then that's what gets rolled on to the utility bill payers.
Do you want to go through capital?
Yep. Okay, so this is kind of the part that I've warned you about. and this is looking probably for the next few years. It's very heavy, it's very intense. Obviously we have a water meter replacement standard. We do it every year. We have to change out X amount of meters to meet DNR standards and qualifications. Well 5 rehab. Well 5 rehab started off as what was supposed to be a simple project, a simple rehab, pull the well, check the casing, check all the impeller, all the guts that lie within the well. Once we started looking at this and the DNR got involved, they noticed that our chemical room is not separated between the chlorine and the fluoride. And they have now, since in the last few years, created the rule that says they have to be separated. Once you start separating and doing construction in a well house, that opens up another entire can of worms. Now you have to review plumbing, you have to review electrical, you have to basically comb through the entire building. So what well 5 started off as, which was just a normal, simple rehab, has now escalated into a rather large project. As you can see in the $2 million range, which 500,000 has already been put towards it. And well 5 is currently being worked on right now, along with well 7. The risk and resiliency is a DNR mandate that talks about basically terrorism and the safety measures that we have with our wells, how we train our people to handle disaster situations, terrorist situations, cyber situations. This is something that Strand and Associates is working on for us. The century average reconstruction. Unfortunately, it's not the bridge I wish it was that was being reconstructed. They're starting at Branch Street that you guys know. We're gonna need to move a bunch of our utilities, both water and sewer, are looking like they're gonna need to shift from the south side of Century Avenue to the north side of Century Avenue. There's not enough room with what is being proposed by the county. So that's kind of something that we knew was coming, but we didn't know the scale of it. So that's gonna be represented on the water and the sewer side. Water utility vehicle replacement, standard truck, F-350 with a workbox, toolbox, computer. We basically have that figured out really well for our crewmen, where every truck is outfitted the same, so they can jump in one and everybody knows what's in it and can run with it and go. Well 7 planning, well 7 is in Stonefield, off of Stonefield Road, right off of Gammon, if you're familiar with it. Well 7 was established, I started here in '04, believe it or not. And I think it was at least 10 years prior to that well was drilled in. And actually it was drilled in twice, because the first time it was drilled in crooked. So there's actually 2 out there. The other one will need to be capped. Due to the aging of well 4 on High Road and its life expectancy, it's on its last leg, and we know that from the last rehab that was done. We're gonna need to come up with a replacement and something that's more efficient and supplies the city water. It's probably not in the right direction when you consider the growth of the city. However, it's already established. It saves us $500,000 right off the bat because it's there. So that's what we're choosing to go with. It fiscally makes the most sense. That's what you see the planning. That will obviously get quite heavier in the next couple of years when we talk about building and construction. The Northern Loop planning. Northern Loop planning is hopefully what will save the water utility from our issues on Century Avenue at the bridge at Baskerville. And we all are familiar with that. And it's frustrating for everybody. Transportation, my guys, everybody. The Northern Loop would take the water main down Pheasant Branch Road out to Balzer and bring it into the back door of Bishop's Bay. That would be a cost to the utility on the initial. However, those costs could be recouped as development pushes out that way. If we go that way versus relaying the water main that's in place on Century Avenue right now, there are gains in pressure, there are gains in volume, which also talks about, fire, safety, suppression, security. If we choose to go up Century Avenue again, we'll be spending about 1/3 of the cost of what the Northern Loop is gonna be. And it's literally to feed 7 houses, and it's 1,400 feet long when I measured it roughly. So it's gonna be $1 million plus to relay that main. We looked at pipe bursting it in the short term. It was extremely expensive just to alleviate the issues that we're having to deal with, that you see basically every couple of months. We have a break there, and they're literally on top of each other. The bands are touching. Corrosive soils, rocks, big ugly fill that is against that water main. And I wrote an article, I know Charles got it, I hope you guys saw it, that explained kind of what's all going on down there and with that. Because I think people need to know what's happening and why we are at the point where we're at. Leak detection correlator. This goes right back to this area. We had to bring in a leak detector from Milwaukee. It takes about a day to get down here. It's a few $1,000s right off the bat. We spent 3 days chasing the main break this last winter or this early spring when the frost was almost 4 feet in the ground. Luckily, we were close to abandoning that main altogether, just so everybody's aware. And we could do that. But at the same time, then you lose that resiliency and some of that fire suppression, and we obviously don't want to do that. So we're doing everything we can to keep that main intact. But the Northern Loop has to get seriously looked at and considered. You want to go over to sewer? I said capital is very heavy for the utility. Sewer main replacement, I do believe we're not looking at any major reconstruction projects for the next year, right? It's 2027 when there's actual reconstruction. Next year is just repaving, I believe.
That's correct.
Yeah. But if you look down a little further, there's some sewer lining we noticed from the Franklin Ave project. Once that project was finished, where they had attached and done some work, it actually caused some cracks and some other things further down the line, just from obviously the equipment going back and forth. So we're looking to do some lining there as well as a couple other spots. So instead of sewer replacement, basically we're doing the lining, but the sewer replacement stays there as a placeholder for the following year, when we do talk reconstruction. SCADA panel upgrade, remaining panels, bid alternative. Our lift stations right now call the police department when there's an alarm. The police department is relied upon to call our on-call guy, understand what the alarm is that they're giving. All they get is a number and a panel, and they have to transcribe that over to our water utility guy. Several times now, alarms have been missed, not caught, misunderstood. This will take that police department portion of the issue completely out of it. It will go into the same system that our water utility system uses through SCADA, and the computer dials us out, and the computer tells us what's going on. So it takes a human error potential out of it. Lift station rehab. Last year, we did the facilities reviews of all the water wells, towers, as well as lift stations, and basically all of our infrastructure. It was determined that we need to start sticking some money into our lift stations. So basically every year for the next few years, we're gonna start doing a lift station or two a year and rehabbing it. Making sure motors are good, making sure impellers are good. Right now, we're just flying kind of by the seat of our pants. When something fails, we have to try to find the parts, or we have to, fix it with whatever we can to get it by until the parts get in. Getting our lift stations on a program is gonna make a lot more sense, and also eliminating any sort of emergency downtime, et cetera. So that's what we're gonna see for the next few years till we get through all of those. Century Ave Bridge Recon, same thing as the water side, moving that over to the north side of Century Avenue down by Branch Street. Talked about the lining, same thing with the vehicle. That's the portion that comes out for the truck. I think I got everything there. I think that covers everything. Yeah, I guess if you have questions. I think you could tell the water utility has a huge lift. It should be noted that it's essential that the water utility keeps a full crew moving forward right now. We've had some employees go here, go there, switch departments, mainly because they can go to another department, get the same pay, and not have to deal with the responsibilities or the certifications. I'm working with Ben, working with Brian. Once our foreman leaves and our locator in the next couple of years is what they have told me, you're gonna lose roughly 30 years of water utility knowledge. If we keep in place what we have right now, your two senior most guys will have approximately 25 years of experience. The 6 guys below them will have a combined total of 12. That's concerning to me because to truly learn the distribution system, it takes years. We have to invest in our people right now. That's what worries me the most in the water utility. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware.
I have some questions. Okay, so a lot of projects. Do we have enough staff capacity to launch all those projects and oversee them in 2026?
I think that's where you saw the outside services
Okay.
come up as far as bumping that up quite a bit. We're gonna rely heavily on Strand. Strand knows our system, Strand knows our wells, Strand knows our lift stations. We have an excellent working relationship with Strand. We will be relying on them to oversee the projects just as they have done before. I almost on a daily basis have discussion with Ryan Wood, of Strand. There are several people from Strand that are all over our projects right now because they have to be, and stuff keeps popping up. There's a water main issue that came up off of Mountain Drive because of what's happening there with the large complex and the tearing down of the bank. We decided, hey, here's an opportunity to replace a bad section of main. But there you go. We have to quick engineer it. We have to come up with money to do it. So yes, we do. We have staffing, but that's because we're also relying on those outside resources.
Okay. And then to do these large weighty capital projects that you were talking about in the future, will we need to do a full rate case to raise the funds for that?
Bill, you probably know more about that.
Yeah, I think that is something that the city will need to consider. I think it definitely makes sense to move forward with the simplified rate case. We are still in the period where we're eligible for that. But looking at several $1 million of projects over the next 5 years, I do think we need to be planning on a full rate case, probably within the next couple of years. And last week, I was at a session at a WGFOA conference about utility rate studies. That is a 1-year process to do a full rate case, from doing the initial planning, submitting it to PSC. They said once you submit to PSC, you can count on 6 months for them to review, then follow-up questions. So I would say within the next couple of years, we should be looking at that, but knowing it'll be an additional year before that would be completed.
Okay. And then you mentioned the Northern Loop planning, the idea of using Pheasant Branch Road and Balzer. Explain to me, like, what does that look like? Is the infrastructure already underneath Pheasant Branch Road, or would it need to be?
It would need to be installed. It would be a full-on pipe laying project. As I'm trying to think of the builder out there, Redtail. Basically, with the phases of Redtail, it has carried water main out almost to where the Dane County Park in the Mound is, which is extraordinary that we're out that far already, because I don't think the water utility, I don't think the city, figured that we would be out that far this quick. I think this northern loop had been proposed before, and now it's just come back around because of the constant issues that we see on Century Avenue and because of the direction of the city's growth. I know too, Bishop's Bay, once the second, or I know they're past their second and third phases up there, but as they start pushing towards, it's not Borchers. What's the road? Onken. As they keep pushing towards Onken, they're gonna need a bigger supply of water to come in and feed them. This would, the way I understand it is, if we lay this as the utilities upfront cost, we will get those costs back as the developers push their way towards our main, because they're gonna have to hook onto it. But it's that upfront cost that we're gonna have to incur initially.
Yeah, so that's where we're likely looking at needing to consider borrowing for some of those projects and then building that debt service into a full rate case in the future.
Bill, do you know anything about how that would work as far as gaining some of those funds back through the development?
I think that's going to be a big conversation. It'll involve negotiations. It'll involve city attorney and plannings, but that's something we need to look at.
Just for awareness, my church did that. Actually, I know someone else that goes to that church, and because they were so far out. And then as people moved, like the subdivisions came towards them, those people hooked onto it, and then they pay. So that's actually how I learned about that process, was actually through the church members, and that they saw the vision. So I think, it's something that we should have a solid conversation. And Century Avenue right now, we don't need less lanes closed. We took a lot of heat for that. So I appreciate that you shared that insight because I didn't think about that connection.
Yep, yeah, the Labor Day main break was frustrating. Everybody, after a long summer of construction already on Century Avenue.
Yeah.
And then for my guys to have to work a holiday weekend on a main
Yeah.
break and do another traffic shift. And Ben called me graciously and I told Ben I'm on the phone with news stations because news stations are reporting Century Ave is going to be completely closed till Wednesday, which is 3 days from where we were. It was just a mess. And I wrote a note to Charles and as well as other staff, telling how much they're appreciated, but they literally took a verbal abusing out there that day from the public.
Yeah.
Getting all kinds of names sworn at. It's not fun for them. It's not fun for us. This is my number one focus problem because that main break we had this spring, that was a $50,000 main break. When you add that frost in the ground, it just compounds costs and time so much more. I'll take a main break on Labor Day weekend with no frost any day versus, January, February, those deep winter months.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your hard work.
Okay, we are at 8:20. Next up on the agenda is a series of other smaller departments. I think I can go through this pretty quickly. If you can just give me a few minutes, touch on the highlights, and then we'll be ready to wrap up. So city administrator, very simple, no initiatives or changes recommended. For administrative services, if you can go to page 24, there are 3 items. These are all inflationary increases. The first is for the line called data processing. That is actually for our iSolved HR and payroll system. That represents a 5% increase in price, which is what we've been seeing each year from that system, as well as incremental increase in the number of employees. Other operating expenses, $2,500. That is for costs related to the printing, stuffing, and mailing of property tax bills. We actually were about 12,000 in that line item in 2024. So this represents a $500 increase over what our 2024 actual was. That's a cost that we need to incur in working with the printer that Dane County utilizes. And then the final item is our audit services that represents a $2,200 increase, about 3%, and that's related to the new agreement that was approved with Baker Tilly. If there are no questions there, I'll keep going. Elections budget, if you can go to page 27. Election budget fluctuates between odd and even years with the number of elections. City clerk had requested a total of 111,100 in 2026, up from a budget of 47,000 in 2025. In having discussions with her, it sounds like she planned for essentially what she would consider the worst case scenario with 4 full elections, high turnout, additional workers. I did look back at what we actually spent in 2024, and it was closer to $80,000. I think as she put this together, she wanted to be conservative. What's included in the proposed budget is 86,100, kind of looking at more of a typical even numbered year scenario, with the thought that after the primary and election in the spring, see where we're at, see what's needed for scheduling, and if there is a need to move from that 86,000 to the 111, put in a contingency request. And we certainly don't want to underfund the elections, but we also don't necessarily want to budget for the worst case scenario if we think there's a good chance that we may come in under that. So that was the thought process for the elections budget. For council and committees, there were no changes or initiatives requested. For other, if you can go to page 150, there is an increase for the city attorney line item of $9,809. That represents a 4% increase. per the agreement for the city attorney. We have a $5,000 adjustment for the other departmental miscellaneous item, looking at where our history has been. There are a number of different things that get coded to that line item. So that's just reflecting kind of where the history has been there. And then finally, if you can go to page 151, which is transfers and contingency. There are transfers to balance the budgets for library and youth center, as well as the transfer out, other transfer out line item is the transfer from the general fund to the transit fund. So we have made assumptions based on our contract with Madison Metro and an estimate of what we'll receive in state funding for transportation. And then this is the change that's needed to balance the transit budget based on those estimates. Finally, under contingency, as I had mentioned in the overview presentation, we have a number of 430,000 in personnel contingency. That would provide funding for the implementation of the non-union compensation study. And the proposed budget that is based on January 1 implementation of options 1 and 2, which is if someone is below the minimum of their new grade, that they would move to at least the minimum. Or they would receive a 2.5% increase, which would essentially function as our cost of living adjustment for 2025. So that would be greater of move to minimum or 2.5% as a January 1 increase. There's also funding included within this number to implement option 3 with a mid-year adjustment on July 1st. Option 3 is the scenario that looks at where people are placed within grade and trying to address the issue that the consultants identified, that we have a number of employees that have been here longer term, 10, 12 years, and are still not at midpoint. So under option 3, employees would receive, if they are not already at this point in the comp plan or their grade, an adjustment of 2.5% per year for time in position, capped at 6 years. So if somebody has been here that number of years and they're not yet to the midpoint, that would help move them to the midpoint. That is recommended or proposed as a mid-year adjustment, just looking at cost and trying to make progress on implementing that study with the full year impact of that realized in 2027. Also included within that personnel contingency are placeholders for the police and EMS unit, which are still under negotiation. And then the last item, reserve for contingencies, that's the city's general contingency or rainy day fund. That it would be adjusted based on the policy that was recently revised of 0.5% of the general fund operating budget. And I'll through that quickly, but happy to answer questions on any of those.
No surprises there. Thank you.
I have some questions, but first I wanted to thank Brian for the narrative and the 2026 goals, including the one to implement the strategic plan for the city, including use of available funding resources to broaden equity initiatives, et cetera. I think that's really important given things happening today. I just appreciate that that's still in our plan. I also appreciate expanding solar and renewable energy use in city operations. I didn't want to keep Mike here, but I think given that we spend over $200,000 on energy for powering our pumps, when we do the well rehab, it might be good to make sure that there is solar included on those. Looking at the things you mentioned, Bill, I'm looking at the first of all, when is the organizational structure assessment coming from the consultant?
That project is just getting kicked off. So Baker Tilly worked to complete the classification and compensation study first. We're going to be kicking off that project now. I think a lot of the work and interviews with departments will take place after the holidays, but we want to get that started yet this year.
So that information will be available for the 2027 budget discussions. Okay, great. And then one question about the library transfer, because Jocelyn said something before she left about something along the lines, and Randall, perhaps you know, that with our application for the tax exemption, we have to show that we are contributing a certain amount. is the proposed cut for the transfer to the library going to jeopardize what she was talking about?
Well, just to clarify, there is not a proposed cut in the transfer to the library. As shown here, there's a $31,482 increase. I should also note that for the library, that the funds for the compensation study implementation are part of that personnel contingency within the general fund. So once the budget is adopted, I'm anticipating that we would move the portion of those costs for the library to the library and then adjust that transfer number. So that would be going up.
Okay, because on page 7 of the operating budget, it shows the 31,000 requested, but the adjustment is down 20,000.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, so there was a line item request increase for books and materials and various other items. So that is part of the proposed budget, is out of the additional funds that they requested, pulling back 20,000 from that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that whatever the city's contribution to the library is sufficient to make us eligible for the thing that Jocelyn was talking about. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're on it.
Yeah, and I think with the personnel increases, because a big portion of that is for staff at the library, but yes, we will want to make sure we are at least at that minimum.
Okay, thanks.
That's it? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work. Thanks for your time. Stand adjourned.
Yep, and I would just add that if there are other questions that come up between now and the next meeting, please send them to us. We'll work with the departments to be prepared to address those at your next meeting. We'll have some additional information to start the meeting, but then, I think the main purpose is to focus on budget deliberations and follow-up.
And what time will that meeting begin?
We're planning on 5:30.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.